Mr. Clerk, time is 6:01. I'm going to call this Budget Committee meeting to order. The town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas, recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Gallo. Comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. No delegations. Items 6.1, 2023 operating budget, community partner business plans and presentations. We are going to start with 6.1.1 Central York Fire Services 2023 operating grant. This is binder tab 14. We have a presentation to be provided by Fire Chief Ian Lang, Mike Mays, treasurer from town of Newmarket, and I believe Chief Deputy Ingalls is online as well, and he'll be presenting. Yep. Chief, did you want to say a few words before we start?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to welcome council to our first meeting with you in the new term and say that my voice is a little shaky here tonight. So we have a pinch hitter and Deputy Ingalls will be here to give you all the details, but Mike Mays and I will remain afterwards if there are additional questions, and the deputy's more than capable of handling everything here. So we'll bring him on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Deputy Ingalls.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me present tonight. Let me just get this set on our slideshow. So as the chief mentioned, obviously we're presenting the Fire Services 2023 budget submission, and this was reviewed by JCC last Tuesday. So I'll just go through, and then if there's any questions, we can go over those as we proceed. So as we know, the budget that we follow is set by Newmarket Council for our guidelines. And then Newmarket Finance works with the CYFS management team.
Deputy Chief, can I just, I think you're showing the wrong screen. So just what's on our screen is showing different.
Oh, which one, which slide is there?
Go to display settings.
I'm hearing go to the display settings up at the top there.
Oh, user seeing the user seeing my notes. Does that have the correct screen now?
No, you need to go see right above it says display setting. Oh, I just lost the whole screen. Now I'm just seeing you. Oh, now we're back, I think.
So display settings.
I'll just, if you can get it back to where you were before.
For some reason, it's locked up here. 1 second.
Mhm. If you I'm being told if you unclick use presenter view up at the top there in the center, right under where it says monitor and then automatic, and then it says use presenter view. If you unclick that.
I'm not seeing that.
Just go.
Are you able to share it, Linda, from your screen?
Linda, are you able to share it? And then maybe you can just, if a deputy chief, if you can just say next slide and then that way.
Yeah, if
Linda
we can do that,
Okay, we'll do it that way.
okay, sorry about that. If we go to the next slide there, Linda, that'd be great.
There we go.
Perfect, thank you. So as I mentioned, Newmarket Council sets the budget guidelines for CYFS. And then Newmarket Finance works with the CYFS management to develop that draft budget. I also want to put in a thank you to the Town of Aurora finance team for working with the Newmarket finance team on setting this year's budget and coming up with the recommendations. As I also mentioned, we reviewed the budget with the JCC team at last week's meeting. So now we're obviously at the Aurora Council comment stage for the budget, and then we will move on to Newmarket Council at the end of the month. Next slide, please. So the 2023 budget, and this is based off of the 10-year plan that was put into play, and this is the last year of that plan. We're currently in the master planning phase, and we'll be presenting the fire master plan to JCC in March or April, and this will help us set our next 10-year plan that we'll be moving forward. Our asset replacement fund, we increase this annually by $35,000, and this is part of that 10-year plan and the assets that are needed to be replaced during that phase. Also, during the 2023 budget, there's no additional revenues that we've added in, as the increases that we're anticipated in seeing are going to offset the decrease to the Whitchurch-Stouffville agreement that we see a step down revenue coming in for. We also have the addition of the federal statutory holiday with the Truth and Reconciliation Day on September 30th. This was added in and has impacted our lieu time payout. The fire master plan, this will be finalized in 2023. We'll be presenting again, like I said, in March and April to the JCC, and then subsequently to Town of Aurora and Town of Newmarket councils. From the initial and preliminary findings of this, there's been a recommendation to increase our staffing ratio from 1.25 to 1.33 firefighters per crew. So what this means is right now, when we hire for a new apparatus, a new truck, which is 4 platoons made up of 4 firefighters on each, we hire 20 firefighters to backfill those spaces. What we're finding with the increase in vacation, lieu time, sick time, WSIB, long-term disability, and training requirements, the recommendation is to move that to 1.33 firefighters per crew. So what this means is that for every new apparatus brought in, that's roughly 22 firefighters to fill the 16 spots. There's already been a number of departments that have moved towards this 1.33 ratio, the closest being Vaughan, which adopted this last year. We also have the mandatory firefighter certification regulation that came into effect last July, and this will have an impact on the budget from 2023 to 2028 as we work to certify all of our firefighters. If you can remember, last year I had presented to both councils and the JCC some of the top end of what we could experience with it. As the pictures become clearer and more information's come out through the OFM and our training plans become a little more clear, we know we're not going to be anywhere near that cost increase. Right now, what we're looking at is about $300,000 spread over that 5-year period. Now, this isn't a budget increase. This is just the cost that it's anticipated to deliver that certification process. We're anticipating about $15,000 to $30,000 per year in cost increases over that time period. That'll cover things like the increased certification and overtime during that point. As you're looking through the budget, you'll also notice that there's a 0.06% change in the cost allocation. This has resulted in a shift of about $18,000 in the operating cost towards Aurora. And what this is related to is the rapid growth of Aurora, or growth faster than Newmarket, resulting in that increase. Next slide, please. So the operating budget and our growth component of it as part of that 10-year forecast. The initial growth plan was calling for $1.25 million increase to the budget based on that 10-year plan. And this is made up of the base, which is our wage and benefit increases as per the collective agreement, as well as the growth component, which was hiring 2.5 firefighters to build up for that next crew in similar fashion as we did for Station 4-5 and the addition of an E451. What we've done, though, is looking at it, deferred that for a further year until we have a clearer picture of what the fire master plan is going to call for, and then we'll readdress this as we come forward. There's also the additional stat holiday that we've added in as an expense here. So overall, our growth fund for that is $986,439. Next slide, please. When we start to look at the overall budget, $30,500,000 for that, that's an increase of about 3.34%. When we look at the breakdown of it, that's $17 million to a Newmarket share and $12 million to Aurora's share, with increases of 3.23% and 3.49% respectively. Next slide, please. When we see the breakdown of our wages and benefits, we can see that the regular wages increased by 3.1%, or just over $500,000. We've also been able to reallocate some of those regular part-time wages. As you know, last year we transitioned that regular part-time position into a full-time position, so that $52,000 has moved into the regular wages. We are seeing an increase in overtime, and due to those things like sickness, WSIB, long-term disability, the increase in vacation and lieu time. So we've increased that by $60,000 to help offset that. This will also help offset some of the overtime costs associated with the mandatory certification. We've also worked hard over the last couple of years to increase our lieu time paid out, as this was running in a deficit a number of years. So we're trying to get it to a balance point, which after this year, we should be in the ballpark. Our casual seasonal wages, these are for our smoke alarm students that we bring in every summer for the Stay Fire Smart program. So overall, in the 2023 budget, our salaries account for $25,600,000. This is a 3.3% increase. Next slide, please. So those salaries work out to about 84% of our overall operational budget. Some of the other bigger accounts for that operational budget and the associated increases are going to be our machine oil and fuel program. So this is the fuel for the apparatus. Everybody knows we've seen an increase in fuel prices, specifically diesel prices, over the last couple of years. So we've adjusted this to bring us up a little closer to that value, as we're anticipating to see elevated fuel costs throughout 2023. The wellness program, this was a $40,000 increase, or 28% over the previous budget. The previous budget was held steady for a number of years as we were trying to locate or find a new provider for these services. And in 2022, we were able to sign a contract with a new provider. Unfortunately, it wasn't a steeper price for the first 2 years of the program. So this is the second year of the program. So we will see that increase. That will gradually go down over years 3, 4, and 5 of the contract. Training, again, we've increased by $10,000 for this year, and that's to allocate money towards that mandatory certification for the certification and material. Vehicle repairs and maintenance, $43,000. This is just due to inflationary pressures on parts associated with the vehicles. Another one to highlight is our dispatch services contract. We've increased this by 34,000 just to allocate for the growth that's occurred in both communities as per the contract with Richmond Hill. This will be something we keep an eye on in 2023 as in 24 and 25 as they ramp up for the new NG 911 system. And there may be costs associated with those upgrades that are passed on to the end users. Hydro is one that we were able to bring in line as Station 4-5 was being planned for. This account was ramped up, and what we've seen is for the 6 months that we were in Station 4-5 in 2022, we've been able to bring that closer in line. Next slide, please. For a capital budget year, this is a relatively light year with no apparatus or no major station being added onto it. We do have the Station 4-1 renovations. This will be the design phase to finish up the preliminary design we have. So the electrical, mechanical, plumbing, things like that. And this will be for the potential for 24 and 25 to start renovations of that station. We also have 190,000 allocated for our PPE replacement. So this is for bunker gear, firefighting helmets, boots, gloves, balaclavas, anything associated with the PPE for the firefighting aspect. As they time out at a 10-year period, they are replaced. We've also brought in PPE washing systems. So this has been equipped at Station 4-2 and 4-5. We'll be adding one to Station 4-4. And this is just to help with our decontamination processes after fires so that we can help combat cancers and the presumptive legislation associated with that. Just a special note on this one. This doesn't include any capital carryovers from 22 to 23. We'll have a little bit remaining on the Station 4-5 as we wrap that up, as well as one of the apparatus has about half. So our hazmat unit that's coming in will still have a little bit outstanding, as well as the 3 electric vehicles on order that we're waiting for delivery. Next slide, please. So thank you for your time, and if there's any questions about the budget.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Council, the recommendation is that Central York Fire Services presentation be received, and 2, that the request for the 2023 operating grant to Central York Fire Services in the amount of $12,722,900 be tentatively approved. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Gallo, seconded by Councillor Gilliland. Any comments or questions to Deputy Chief? Well, Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation, Deputy Chief. Just quickly with regards to the wellness program, you know, over the years, there were some challenges in filling it, finding a provider and filling up that gap. You did say that your contract was signed in 2022. So was the full amount spent this year, providing that service to firefighters?
Deputy Chief?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we actually had run a surplus a number of years. So we had that allocated into an account. So we were able to spend all of it this year, had a bit of a deficit on that GL account, but we're able to tap into the previous year surpluses for that contract.
Councillor?
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions for the Deputy Chief? Seeing none, all the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Deputy Chief, thank you. Chief, thank you. Mr. Mays, thank you for traveling all the way from Newmarket. Council next, 6.1.2, Aurora Public Library Board 2023 operating grant. We have a presentation to be provided by Bruce Gorman, Chief Executive Officer, and Tom Connor, Board Chair, and Julie Roca, Business Manager. Bruce, Tom. Welcome. Floor is yours, Tom.
Thank you. I can open my notes. I'm good. Well, good evening, everybody. My name's Tom Connor. I'm the chair of the Aurora Public Library, and I'm pleased to be here this evening to speak to our 2023 operating budget and to provide highlights of our accomplishments in 2022. 2022 has been another unique year for all of us. During its course, we have been both financially and operationally responsible with service to the residents of Aurora as our top priority in unique circumstances. We have been confronted by challenges related to COVID, the construction project, and the economic climate, all of which we have navigated with decisiveness. For this upcoming budget year, we have balanced our fiduciary responsibilities with the caliber of programs and services the residents of Aurora have come to expect from us. As a key partner of the town of Aurora, we continue to work closely on the Town Square project and to look forward to its future success. I'm now pleased to hand the presentation over to our CEO, Bruce Gorman. Bruce.
Good evening. Thanks very much for having us. I'm happy to be back here. Just want to mention one thing that you just heard Tom Connor's final duties as the chair of the Aurora Public Library and his final duties on the Aurora Public Library, of which on and off he's been off for 22 years. He's an amazing citizen of Aurora. Not surprising, he was Citizen of the Year a couple of years ago and a great mentor to me. And I'm going to clap because it's pretty impressive. So thanks very much, Tom, for all you've done. So good to be back live. I don't like this online stuff all the time. So I'm sure you know how much I'm passionate about libraries. I love them. That's why I'm in this business. One of the really unique things about libraries is that we are community driven. So we don't dictate what people want. We listen. We have a social contract, if you will. It's a two-way dialogue. We learn from the community, and then we come back and we provide programming and experiences that enrich the community and enrich the residents. And it's one of the real reasons why I'm here. The vehicle that we do that with is our strategic plan. One of the pillars of our strategic plan is, as we refer to it as the place of possibilities. Powerful statement. Anything can occur in a library. You can come and just sit and relax and do nothing. You can take in programs. You can learn new things. You can read books, magazines, you name it. There's an article that I sent you. I just want to quickly read this comment from Andrew Carnegie, who's a philanthropist of yesteryear, but built 2,500 libraries, 125 in Canada, most of them in Ontario, and I ran one of them actually. He says the library outranks any other one thing a community can do to benefit its people. It's a never failing spring in the desert. And those words really never have rung more true today. I'm just going to read a couple notes that I made about things that occur at Aurora Public Library. On the screen there, you'll see the Tion Shu Art Group, a musical group. We have poet laureates, music performances, movies, app development. People stay overnight and create an app. STEM programming for the young children, VR, adulting, which are more popular now, courses, newcomer meetups, business courses, death cafes, tax assistance, how to use a Cricut, Black History Month events, skilled trade expos. There's no other place that can occur, in one place where everybody can come and benefit like that. And it's like I said, powerful, and it's an amazing thing that Aurora Public Libraries do. Not all libraries are community driven, but we are, and it shows by the 260,000 or so people we had in 2019 before the pandemic hit. So the slide you're looking at now, certainly we have been impacted, like most libraries haven't been, because we had the pandemic and we had a very active construction project at the same time. It's been a challenging time for us for sure. We've risen to the occasion. A shout out to my colleague Doug Bertrand, the town, who I talked to probably most days over the past 3 years. He's been by my side along the way and been a good ally for us in the day-to-day goings of either a pandemic or, more from his perspective, the construction project. So you're looking at Church Street. So we had when the pandemic happened, we had a pickup service that was in our former parking lot. That worked well. In short order, the parking lot closed over Christmas. I received endless emails because at that moment in time, we were closed. We had no entrance. So we spent some time erecting entrances, 2 of them on Church Street, and a pickup window service and a book drop in short order. And then we reopened and began with our pickup service. Our pickup service, up to 45 people an hour. We're taking advantage of that during peak times, but it was very important to the community at times. As I've mentioned before, we were the only municipal service available given the pandemic years. But that Church Street really became very, very busy. It was the primary entrance for a lot of the heavy material, heavy equipment that was moving in and out the street. The street was definitely, construction. They were digging up the street. So it really didn't create a happy environment for our customers. And I'm sure that some of them were frustrated. There was no parking in the way that they would have liked. I know parking is an issue, but parking was a problem. Accessible parking in particular was a problem. But I'm sure that scared away some people from not wanting to come and visit us. Now, just recently, in October past, we reopened Yonge Street, the Yonge Street entrance after a long time. So we've shifted there. We're going to replace our book drop on Church Street. So it's nicer on Yonge Street. But Yonge Street, we'll have to see the traffic flow, how the traffic flow works on Yonge Street, because almost all of our patrons would visit us on the other side when we had the parking lot, maybe 5-10%. So the new dynamic we're trying to figure out now. And as well, we don't have our program. Well, we just returned to having program spaces available, Magna and Lebovic in the other 2 rooms, but we also didn't have any programming space. So we were deeply affected by pandemic and construction project at the same time. Let's move on to some KPIs for you. It's not too surprising. Nothing has stood out as really remarkable in the KPIs, given the circumstances, 2020, 2021, 2022. So first program indicator you're looking at is our programs. Overall, from last year, from 2021, we're up 1%. That's not the most impressive number, but we're holding our own in difficult years. I kind of thought of 2021 as more of the pandemic year and 2022 as more of the construction year for us. The breakdown on the next slide, not too surprising either. The live programming in 2021, well, we were closed a lot of the time. We didn't have programming space, so there was little to no live programming. But our online programming, as you can see, or our virtual programming in 2021 was at its peak, and that's when we rejigged and we provided some pretty remarkable services to the people online. So now in the virtual programming, it's starting to slide a bit, but that's because people now are out and about and they're not kind of as captured in their homes as they were in the past. Next slide there. So program attendance overall, pretty similar to last year, 2021 to 2022, down 0.7%, not particularly noteworthy there. You're seeing a picture of the York Chamber Ensemble who visited us recently. Attendance breakdown on the next slide. Again, in live attendance in 2021 was, very minimal, but live attendance in 2022, a crazy increase, but that's because we were open again and we started engaging people with our programming in the limited spaces that we have available to program. In the virtual world, next, we were our attendance was as high, as 18,000, and we were providing pretty unique, different types of programs. I'll speak to that in a few minutes. And that's also on the decline now as people come back in the library and they're not so captured as they once were in their homes. Streaming and downloads. Again, coming out of the lockdown, they decreased. That's not surprising. We had, like I said, I've used the word capture a bit, but we did have captured audience for a lot of the pandemic, and people were very happy about that, and we got lots of comments about how important it was for them to engage, whether it was on their computer, but people wanted to get back out. So we're back down a bit now, and that's not too surprising. It's going to be interesting to see where we land between virtual and real live world now. We're not exactly sure where that will play out, but we're working on that. We have pretty remarkable online resources, Hoopla, where you can get ebooks, comics, movies, TV, press reader, newspapers, free music from Freegal, Tumble Books for the little ones. We moved to Cloud Library a few years ago from Overdrive. And, we're a community-led library, and our community told us that they really, really liked Overdrive. So we made the decision to move back to Overdrive, which we just launched last week. The community is pretty happy about that. And we're happy to be back with Overdrive. Circulation. What's nice to see is that our books, our physical books, I always said, the dynamic between digital literacy book or digital material and books, there'll always be some balance there, but our actual book sale or book checkouts have gone up quite a bit, 54%. So it's nice to see that no matter what you say in the digital world, you can't curl up with an ebook quite so easily. So we're happy to see that start to return. And our online followers, so that continues. We have a pretty impressive online presence where we post daily to the popular platforms right now, and we assess new platforms as they arrive. But we continue to grow, and our footprint in the social media world continues to be impressive, regardless of the pandemic or the construction work. And our membership too, so with limited outreach in the community, schools not being available to us, social services agencies, our staff weren't really able to promote new cards and new memberships as they were in previous years. I certainly stood up here in 2019 and talked about the numbers that we had achieved, and we'll achieve those again. But it was difficult for us while people were locked inside. So we're down a bit there, but that's a number that I'm very confident that will return. Quickly talking about some of our online resources. You see Press Reader there, over 7,000 full premium newspapers, magazines in 60 languages, and can be translated into 19 others. And we use Niche Academy, which is something that we helps deliver programs for us. And we use for staff training as well. So our bread and butter is certainly in-person programming. We can't wait to get back to in-person programming. But, our lunchroom, we had to vacate our lunchroom. So our lunchroom was then populated by one of our children's program rooms. And as you all know, Magna and Lebovic were under renovation. So they weren't available to us. They just recently became available, and we're working with the town on a relationship for us to use those rooms. But that's our bread and butter, and we bring a lot of people into this library and into Town Square soon enough because of the programming we do. So we really look forward to bringing back programming like we've done. In the meantime, during the pandemic, we were throughout the town, we were in parks, and you would see us in different places throughout the town as another way to engage the community. But we certainly look forward to bringing back our programs. Virtual programming, it was quite interesting. It brought the community together in a new kind of way that they hadn't been brought before. Access to speakers was something that, we could have speakers from Toronto or wherever that wouldn't normally or necessarily be able to make their way up to Toronto. And expanded the experience of Aurorans. It connected them with others, similar interests, whether it was in a different time zone or a different province or country. We had people from California attend our events, online events, and people from London, England attend our events. So it was unique, and it will continue for us. We don't know exactly which way it will continue, but that's something that we're working on. Okay, I'll go quicker. We had podcasts, we had multi-sector career fairs, we had award-winning authors like Farzana Dr. Jana Wong, George Elliott Clark, who's a good old Nova Scotia Halifax boy, and Linda Rui Fang. We had, what I was really pleased with was the Meet the Candidates events that I'm sure all of you were familiar with. Every candidate attended that event, and we thought that was impressive in that, the respect that Aurora Public Libraries commands in the community afforded, everybody a desire to be there. It was a super event, well run by Risha, and I think it was well attended. In the order of 350 people attended that engagement. We also did a provincial one as well. But those are pretty remarkable things that we do. I know the chamber did one as well, but not many people allowed everybody to get a chance to look at their counselors. A couple quick community partners that we have: Library Settlement Partnership, the Writers Union of Canada, League of Canadian Poets, Aurora Film Circuit, National Film Board, Access Employment Toronto, Regional Conservation Authority, PFLAG, CRA, Women's Network, Early On Child Literacy. And we're also hosting, we just kind of finalized this, the Chamber of Commerce for one of their After 5 events coming up in February. So we're in the community, we're everywhere. And we're happy to be there. Our creative studio is about innovation, collaboration, creation. It's about hands-on. You can go in there and make all kinds of really cool things and experience technology like you cannot experience anywhere else. Individual projects you can undertake on your own, and we also provide training. Okay, so the COVID pressures, then some of the more defined ones that we faced. Certainly reduced service levels. Our hours were reduced. We had a lot of staff absences. We told staff, if you felt unwell related to COVID, then don't attend. There were certain days when, we had 6, 7 of our staff unable to attend. So we were scrambling for that. The resumption of in-person programming in addition to maintaining virtual options. So, we only pretty much did in-person programming. Now we do 2 things, virtual and in-person. The loss of programming space, as I recalled there, it was difficult with community partners. A lot of them just shut down. They weren't available to us. Relocation of our Holt's pickup service and subsequent closure of that service. We just closed that service now because the construction on Church Street won't allow us to continue that right now. Construction related issues. I mean, the building flooded numerous times. It flooded on our sorting machine, which put that out of commission for months. And that means we had to have humans do that work rather than the machinery. And of course, limited parking, which you all know about, has been a notable problem throughout the course of both the pandemic and the construction project for us. It's it would happen in a moment, right? I mean, I'd wake up and I'd get a call from Doug Bertrand or someone else that there was a flood here, or this was going on, or something that the Chandos wanted to do, 2 days from now. They then wanted to do 2 hours from now. So it was a struggle. I mean, I call myself an agent of change. That's what I'm pretty good at. But this kind of change was constant and all the time for us. And, we navigated it correctly, but it's been challenging. The public loves us. I'm going to read a couple quick quotes here. APL has played such a significant role in the community that I'm a community member, having benefited enormously from its programs and services. We are so lucky to have a library in our community that cares so much about everyone. Just a quick note on our governance. So we are governed by the Ontario Public Library Act. The town is our primary funder. So that is the relationship that we have with the town. 3 major responsibilities for the board then is to provide comprehensive and efficient public service and submit budget estimates, which is why I'm here tonight with you, along with Tom, and receive the annual grant from the government of Ontario. But our relationship with the town, I'm quite proud of the relationship with the town. I have a very good relationship with senior staff, in particular the CAO. We talk to each other whenever we need to. One of the big things that we try to display the library board is a desire to work with the town as much as we can when there's mutual benefit, and that's what we've done. Town Square is the ideal example of that. Another would be ADP. So when there's efficiencies to be gained between both parties, regardless of our autonomy, we always take a close look at that, and our board is very willing to do that, which they have been over the years. Budget pressures, so inflation and cost of living, us to be able to maintain our existing standard. That's, we're getting more higher costs from everything from our daily supplies. That's nothing new. And our collections, digital collections in particular, they continue to increase in costs. We also had a non-union salary review done. And we found that we were out of alignment in some of our non-unionized staff. So of that group, my management group represents 65 years of library management experience. They are top talent in Aurora, and they're why Aurora Public Library does so well. It's really important to me that they are compensated fairly. We have an upcoming bargaining with one of our unions. We now have 2 unions at Aurora Public Library, but they've already contacted me to make note if they're willing to start bargaining. I'm not sure when that will come, but that is interesting given the economic times that we're in. And I have a second bargaining unit now, another one, and that additional cost there for the alignment with some of the benefits that the original major union that we have. And we were all in for Town Square as we are. And I look at my office on a regular basis and I see it coming together, and I see the ice rink and the waterfalls, and I visioned it, and I had a tour a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month or so ago. Saw the inside and saw how remarkable the auditorium is, and the cafe space down on the first floor. So we couldn't be more excited, and the legacy it'll leave is something. But it was costly to us through our DCs, and we were with the town and Rachel and the DCs. But we would like to be able to replenish our capital. So we take some of our money from operating and set it aside for capital. But we're working on a capital plan, a 10-year capital plan, and we also have ongoing capital requirements. So we'd like to be able to up the contribution for us so that we have more ability to make decisions on our capital on our own and do the things that the community really wants us to do. We have value calculator on our website. If you have a minute or two to look at it, we just launched it. We figure that the taxpayer in Aurora pays about $65 for the library service that they receive. And if you go on that value calculator and you go to one course we take and take out an ebook and take out a regular book, you've exceeded that $65. So we really feel that the 3% we're asking for is responsible. And we think that the town, the residents of Aurora, get really great value out of that. And that value calculator, if you have a chance to look at it, will certainly indicate that. So it's 3% before assessment that we're asking for. As I said, we think that that's reasonable, and we think that the town, that's really a great investment in the town. I've told you how much I love libraries, and for all the reasons I just mentioned to you pretty quickly. But libraries are really important to communities, and the contribution of 3% before assessment, we think is an outstanding investment for us to continue our great work. And as we look forward to what Town Square will bring to this corner of Aurora, we're excited that we'll have more business as well as Town Square. I'll leave you one last quote. Sorry that I took so long. Richard Florida, who's a friend of mine, I've worked with him in the past. What other institution could offer story times for children, entrepreneurial services, and financial literacy for adults, programs ranging from author talks to musical acts, and a place to work remotely or get a Zoom call with people from across the world? And that's your public library. And I went through that quick. I appreciate your time very much. And as always, I'm happy to answer questions, and I'm happy to answer them more so in live rather than in my study at home. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. Council recommendations that the Aurora Public Library Board presentation be received. And 2, that the request for the 2023 operating grant to the Aurora Public Library Board in the amount of $4,052,100 be tentatively approved. Like with that. Councillor Weiss, second. Councillor Kim, thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Bruce, for delegating. And you've done a phenomenal job since you arrived in the scene July of 2018. And even though you were my second choice, you've done a great job. I'm just kidding. Thomas, my witness, you were my first. So thank you for the, KPIs are always important, and, council has always asked for KPIs. And, one comment about the KPIs is, given that we're just slowly coming out of the pandemic, it would have been nice to have the 2019 data so that we can kind of see that as a base case scenario. That's a comment, but the other thing is, the programming has declined by 17% and participation in virtual program has also gone down a little bit more, 25%. What was the decision behind decreasing the online programming for 2022?
Mr. Gorman?
I mean, it was a natural flow, right? The usage of online programming decreased organically because people were out and about more and they could come in more, right? So it wasn't the deliberate decision to cut online programming by X percentage and increase in-person programming by a certain percentage. We've been naturally watching the organic nature of people using our online services a little bit less, right?
Counselor?
Thank you. Was there discussion within the board that if you increase programming, that perhaps there might be some stickiness to the online audience that you were able to attain in 2020 and 21?
Mr. Gorman?
So given the circumstances we're in with no programming space in the library until just a few months ago, we were doing the best we can in the situations we can. So I said, most of my library career has been with my strategic hat on, but over the past couple of years, I've had to have my operational hat on more because of the circumstances that we're confronted with. So we just, we are still working through the room arrangement with the town for us to have access to the new spaces, and then we'll be more deliberate about how we increase programming online or increase or decrease programming online if need be. But we don't know yet. I don't know. We've never been confronted with, this mix of online programming and in-person programming.
Counselor?
Great, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, so in this inflation environment where we have everything from labor to energy and food, commodity costs rising, I'm curious as to in your operating expense line, it's actually you're budgeting down by 2%. I'm wondering how you're able to do that.
Mr. Gorman?
So that's our operating expenses. So we've been as judicious as we could, but a lot of those expenses we've been able to to use technology more. So we're as always, we're being as efficient as we can and we're using the equipment as we can. That still accounts for the fact that some of those costs are going up, but we still, like I say, spend our time being as judicious as we can, and we're comfortable with that number. And I mean, it's a 2% decrease, so that's not going to change our game particularly.
Okay.
But it
Counselor-
shows that we're looking for every efficiency that we can, right, in interesting times.
Yes,
Counselor?
thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, my last question is, I know the cost of digital or ebooks have been, in the forefront the last several years, and even when I was on the board. Over the last 2 years during the COVID pandemic, has the multinational publishers, have they bent a little bit in terms of the cost of digital books, and what part of the library's expenses are going to digital books?
I'm not sure.
Mr. Carmen?
So I will say that, yes, we haven't been, the outrageous amounts that they were charging when the publishers saw how much they could make not that many years ago. It hasn't been the same. The breakdown, I'm not sure if Julie, you have the collection breakdown for digital versus print. 300,000 for digital collections. So that's still a battle, but over the past 2 years, it hasn't been what we were seeing, which was just atrocious increases in costs, very difficult for us to manage.
Counselor?
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. You guys done a phenomenal job in this generational crisis, and there's no greater test than these types of stress tests. And if you can manage your way through this, they say that you're well on your way to something. So
numbers, but they're so darn good that I think I wanted to make this a bit of a feel good rather than show how big they were in 2019, because they're not really representative. The the analysis of the 2019 years to the 2020 or 2021 years don't give the kind of business intelligence that I would make good decisions on.
Thank you.
Counselor? Counselor Reese?
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Gorman. It was a great presentation, and I applaud you for the intensity that you have for your community focus. It's very good. Also for your tenaciousness and resilience and providing a number of diverse opportunities. You and I spoke a while back about the membership strategies, and I noticed you've got in your KPIs, the membership strategy is memberships are down. And could you help us and help the public with some of those membership strategies that you intend on putting in place?
Mr. Gorman?
When we were out in the community in schools or other organizations, we would be ensuring that we signed people up, but that all stopped, right? That all came to a hard stop. So the restarting of that will be our primary strategy to bring back the members. And then we have really unique opportunities now. We developing a relationship with the chamber. They're coming over to spend some time at their After 5 event, so we'll grab them. And then the opportunities that Town Square will present, I think will be interesting too, as we bring more people into the area. But the first strategy is to get when we can get back out into the schools and communities within the community and community organizations, is to draw those numbers back up. Because we had big numbers a couple of years ago, and we intend to get back there.
Counselor?
Great, thank you. No more.
Thank you. Counselor Thompson?
Thank you, Bruce, Tom, and the other board members that are present. Certainly appreciate all the work you've done. You talked about rising to the occasion. Certainly it's been a challenge over the last few years, obviously with the pandemic and with the construction as well. So kudos to everybody involved. Just picking up on what Councillor Kim was speaking to, I too, when I was looking at the metrics, I was curious to know how the usage of the library compares in 2022 to 2019 before the pandemic. When you look at circulation and you look at the mix of virtual and streaming and downloading, is the library being, I guess, as utilized as much as it was back in 2019? Or are we still, slowly getting back to the norm? And I know you don't probably have the numbers off the top of your head, but just what does your gut say to you?
Mr. Gorman?
So we're nowhere back to our utilization, not close. So it's going to take a while. I mean, and that's not just us, that's everybody. I mean, I can go in and get a parking spot in the GO station anytime I want, anytime of the day, before I had to get there before 7 a.m. So, I think earlier in the presentation, I talked about some of the frustration that people had about the Church Street experience and navigating that, and them deciding that maybe we're going to steer clear for a bit, or maybe use our online services. So, as we begin to program more, like I said, we're still working with the town on having access to the new spaces on our side. And I mentioned further that programming is a real draw, but we're not anywhere close. So, if I'll pull the 2019 numbers on page 7, program attendance, just as an example. In 2019, it was 32,000. So double, kind of, right? That's why I kind of didn't want to showcase those as much, right? We're still recovering. And I don't think anybody has that crystal ball on, when we can get our programming rooms set and start bringing people back, that will be a big thing for us. Now, as far as Town Square goes too, we're set. We have Yonge Street, although, people are getting used to using Yonge Street, but we're okay now. We can rebuild our footprint and rebuild our programming and watch Town Square, come up around us there. But we are not impeded now like we once were with the construction. So we're able to operate kind of now. So that'll be the 2023 story, is to get people back. But yeah, so I'm not sugarcoating that we're nowhere near kind of what we would have been in 2019.
Counselor?
Thanks very much, Bruce. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Gilliland?
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming to speak today and give us this presentation. I had a couple questions based on some of the comments around the table. I know you had mentioned there was higher use of technology, so you're able to reduce your operating. And I'm just kind of curious, I'm trying to understand how that helped reduce, if on top of that, you were also adding in person somebody's got to operate that, someone's got to manage it, someone's got to maintain that and ensure the right information's there. So I'm just kind of trying to understand moving forward. If people are still going to be engaged in virtual and that's not going away, and obviously hybrid's here to stay, how do you see that moving in the future with your operating budget? Do you foresee that continually going down a trend then, or is that changing?
So
Mr. Garment?
what we like to do is, have both of those things occurring at the same time. So what we'll do is we'll begin recording all of the in-library sessions and allowing them then to be presented in the virtual world. So we're not, we're using the same resources kind of, right? So just videotaping is easy rather than having to separate and having certain staff do virtual programming and certain other staff do online programs. So that's one of our strategies, is that we'll ensure that we do both of those things at the same time. And then anything online was already done in the library. And, I was referring a bit to the loss of technology that we had because of the flood of the sorter room there. So we're going to gain some efficiencies in operating because of that in 2023 that we didn't have in 2022.
Counselor?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor to Bruce. You had mentioned in the budget impact pressures about the non-union salary alignment and pay equity review. And I didn't really get any kind of breakdown of what they equated to other than personnel costs at 4%. So it's rather generalized. So I really don't know where that's going, who that's compensating, what that looks like. Our 2019, obviously numbers were a lot different, and maybe staffing numbers are a lot different because it was a lot more demand. So I'm just trying to understand how you got to this number. I'd like to see a little more detail on that.
Mr. Gorman?
So the review that was done of non-unionized employees indicated that some of the senior management group and others in the non-union work group were out of scale. So specifically, that would be of the 3% I'm asking, that will probably be a little bit less than 1.5% of that. The rest of the story is unrelated to that review. Our unionized workforce, they are paid according to the collective agreement, and that's how they operate now. But the increase that I'm asking for of that 3%, a little bit less than 1.5, would be to ensure that we get these staff members back in scale of what librarians across Ontario are getting paid.
Counselor?
So that's the senior management then.
Mr. Curran?
Not all, not me, and not all, not just senior management. There's other non-unionized employees in marketing and IT.
Counselor?
Thank you. Another question here. Obviously, you have some capital contribution to the capital, and I guess you're trying to recoup some of your reserves. How do you look at that and foresee that down the road? What's your objective and what's your goal?
Mr. Gorman?
We're adding about, I think, 20,000 to our capital contribution right now. We're developing a capital strategy, a 10-year capital strategy to ensure the life of Aurora Public Libraries into the future. We don't think we're going to need anytime soon another facility. But that strategy we're working on, that could include fundraising or different things, and we'll look at the funding opportunities for that. But this is one of them. This also represents, some of the shorter term capital needs that we may need on a more year-to-year basis. But we have a capital reserve that's slowly increasing. But certainly our DCs are close to non-existent to us, and DCs are under further pressure from the provincial government anyway. So we will have a capital strategy, 10-year one, that I'll be pleased to bring to the table to you after it's fully developed.
Counselor?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor Bruce. And I'm sorry, I have so many questions here. And you talk about the upcoming collective bargaining in 2023. So I just kind of get a little worried that, we are talking about increasing in salaries all across the board, non-unionized. Sounds like we're going to be faced again with another ask. I'm just trying, I know you're asking for what you're asking right now, but I'm also trying to think down the road what we're looking at for next year as well, because it is included as a budget pressure in this budget. Could you expand on that, please?
Mr. Gorman?
So just like the unions all do at the beginning of the new agreement, they make mention that they're ready to bargain. We don't know when we're going to come to the table with the O2 group, which is the majority of our full-time and part-time staff. We just finished last year in the fourth year of a collective agreement negotiating with them. So there's a hierarchy with the CUPE 905. They go through municipalities before they go through libraries, and they also have some hierarchy within the communities throughout York. So I don't believe that they're going to get to us for a little while. So I'm hoping that, and I don't have a crystal ball. I've had discussions with your HR manager, Dimitri, too, about this. But we're hoping that some of these pressures may have passed. But I would expect that they'd come to the table, given the climate, whether it's this year or next year, with those types of asks. And then it's up to skilled negotiation to play that out. But it's a bit hard to know where that. I mean, labor unions. We've seen a lot of labor disruption and angst in Ontario lately. We certainly aren't at that same level. But it'll be interesting over the next few years to see if it wanes a bit and comes back down, and inflation comes back down a bit, and the unions have maybe a different perception that they might have now.
Councillor?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. And finally, because I don't have the 2019, and I hope between now and when we finalize the budget, we could see the 2019 comparator. That would be good to see. That would be great if you could forward that. And, obviously some of the more detailed questions, maybe you could, that I've asked today, just kind of confirm that through some communication. That would be fantastic. You noticed you have your second bargaining unit as well. Could you explain what you mean by that?
Second bargaining unit is pages and temporary employees. So they got their votes, and the union was ratified. CUPE did this. CUPE is being pretty deliberate about getting as many employees as they can unionized. That group with us has been non-unionized for a long time, but there's always been that kind of veiled threat that they would become unionized, and they did. And we spent quality time and Zoom bargaining with them. They're a smaller group, no doubt. They are, but nevertheless, they'll be looking for similar benefits that their counterparts in the O2 group get. So we have two of the three unions, I guess, now here.
Councillor?
Thank you. And just last question, I swear. Your staffing levels from 2019 and through the pandemic, I'm sure ebbed and flowed and changed, to your comment. Are you up to the same staffing level as you were before, even though your programming is down, or?
Yes, our
Difference?
2019, our 2019 numbers. Yeah, we have a couple. We're not deliberately gapping, but there's a few gaps that are occurring. What is occurring is that when I would put out an application for a librarian or other position, instead of getting 30 applicants, I'm getting 3 or 4, which is not unheard of in other industries too. So it takes longer time. So we've been gapping, not deliberately, but we've been gapping more. But our levels have risen back to almost a few gaps to what they were pre-pandemic.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Sure, no more.
Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Bruce, for presenting. Very thorough as always. I was happy to sit on the board last term. I got to see a perspective that I hadn't ever seen before. Just a couple of quick questions. And I guess once we see the 2019, it'll probably answer that. But if you have it, the 3%, is it consistent? Was it consistent over the past little while, the increase?
Mr. Gorman?
The previous 4 years, I mean, we were under 1% over the course of the 4 years. So we were, I mean, from my perspective, that was just barely cutting it for us. So 3%, which is, pretty good in relation to what other asks I've seen, is well thought out. It's related to the staffing, the pay equity. It's related to some cost of living / inflation, and some pressures that I'm anticipating from the unions, as well as our ability to add to our capital.
Councillor?
And I was through you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask that you have $200,000 in 2023 towards capital. I think 180 last year, and you had contributed 5.3 million towards Town Square project. Do you know the balance on on that reserve.
Mr. Gorman?
I believe it's around 600,000, around 600,000. Our
Council.
capital reserve.
And the DC.
The DCs, I don't have, that's Rachel. She can talk about these.
I have it in front of me. It's 2 million in 2023 and it goes down.
I believe it was a $3.4 million contribution, I believe, to the bridge, and then a $1.9 million contribution to the corridor or the other way. But that's over at least a 5-year, possibly 10-year debenture.
Counselor, we'll get the numbers.
Yeah, it's 2 million in 2023 and it goes down after that. I suspect because we're drawing from it in multiple years in the future. But you had said there's going to be a plan for the capital reserve in the next little while. And the next board will review that and come up with a strategy to replenish that account.
The
Mr.
capital plan to provide Aurorans with, some increased services based on construction that we feel is important, that we haven't finished, we haven't decided fully yet, but it'll be a fulsome capital plan that will indicate we'd like to do this and this within the walls of the library, and we'd like to fund it by whichever funding methodologies we come up with.
And
Council.
to you, Mr. Mayor, that is a board discussion and presentation and yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was it.
Council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I will remind council, everybody held the line back in 2019, our first budget, last term. We asked everybody to hold the line and they held the line at zero increase for everyone. And that's not just the library, but it's also ACC, everyone, Historical Society. So just wanted to remind everyone about that. Bruce, thank you very much for coming and presenting. We appreciate it. And Tom, thank you for all your great work. It's no wonder you were a citizen of the year, and we appreciate it. And thank you for everything that you do for the town. So thank you. Thank you. With that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next, we have 6.1.3 Aurora Historical Society Board 2023 operating grant. A presentation to be provided by Kathleen Vike, curator, Alan Lambert, interim co-president, Jeffrey Daw, interim co-president, Dan McGowan, director, and Ronan Grunberg, director. Yeah, I think we're going to need a whole bunch of mics there, Mr. Clark. All right. Thank you very much. Pleasure. And obviously, I'd like to welcome, obviously, our former mayor, Jeff Dahl. Thank you.
Thank you. And good evening to Mr. Chair and members of the Budget Committee. I'm Al Lambert. I am, as you say, current co-president of the Aurora Historical Society Board. My typical position is vice president, and I am joined tonight by my colleague Jeff Daw as the co-president. Actually, also to call out and acknowledge Tom Connor for his contributions to Aurora, and it's admirable to see such great citizens providing such great service. In terms of tonight, I do also want to acknowledge and introduce those here for the Aurora Historical Society, which is the rest of our board. So they were anxious to come and spend time with us tonight, as well. Kathleen Vahi, who is our curator manager, is with us, and she's going to carry the bulk of the presentation after introductions. And also just to acknowledge the town and to acknowledge staff who provide such great advice to us and service to us, and of course council, who have been nothing but supportive of the Historical Society and the work we do. So I just want to also take time to acknowledge that. I will just take a little bit of time to go through a bit of an overview of AHS, and I'll just get you to flip to the first slide to introduce us to again, and unfortunately I'm able to do this math, but AHS has been serving the citizens since 1963, so about to turn 60 years old. Established the Aurora Collection in the museum. We own and operate, which you're going to hear lots more of tonight, what we call our national treasure of Hillary House, and that's what we do and do it on a proud and robust basis, as you'll hear tonight. And also, we see ourselves as an important part of Aurora's rich history, and importantly, its future. And I think that to us is pretty key to why we're here tonight, not only to reflect on where we've been this year in terms of our KPIs and our spends, but also to look to the future. We do, again, for the purposes of the Aurora citizens, provide lots of opportunities through our programming, our education, both virtual and luckily this year in person. And we will continue in 2023 to carry those out in as engaging a way with ourselves and also importantly with some of our other partners around Aurora. So that's kind of the overall context. I'll just get you to flip to the next slide. And really our mandate and mission has been strong for many years. It's to promote the cultural heritage, the material heritage through Hillary House and collections to the community for both education, and we continue to do that regularly, enrichment, and I think that's something that we as a board look to do on a regular basis, and enjoyment of the present and future generations of Aurora. So our mandate and our mission remains strong. I will now actually turn things over to Kathleen Vahi, our curator manager, who's going to take you through the events of last year and look forward to this year. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity.
And thank you. Don't want that to spill. All right, so thanks, you had me. So through 2022, the AHS continued to offer exhibitions, programming, and outreach to engage the community. We maintained our virtual programming that started in 2021, and we're excited to invite back people to Hillary House as the COVID-19 restrictions lifted. Our popular speaker series ran in a virtual format for the first half of the year, and then in a hybrid model for the second half. We hosted 9 of these presentations throughout the year, and our participation remained consistent with 2021. Once the restrictions lifted, we began to bring back some of our in-person events, workshops, and programs, which saw new and returning guests back inside Hillary House. And we had a very exciting year for exhibitions. In the spring, we hosted a traveling exhibition from the Royal Botanical Gardens in Burlington, and then ended the year with 2 collaborative exhibitions, an art exhibition with the Aurora Cultural Center and the Society of York Region Artists, and a historical exhibit with the Salvation Army. These partnerships were incredibly successful and showcased the power and potential for opportunities for collaboration within Aurora. We also partnered with the Aurora Public Library to bring back our ever popular historic Aurora walking tours, which will continue in 2023, and with the Town of Aurora and Royal Rose Art Gallery for summer camps to teach kids about local Aurora history and Hillary House. Next slide. As the restrictions allowed, we participated in a number of townwide events. These events are important outreach opportunities for the AHS, as it provides a way for us to get out into the community to raise awareness for the AHS and Hillary House. Throughout the year, we remain dedicated to our fundraising efforts by hosting profitable in-person fundraising events. This included a Mother's Day tea, a golf tournament, the Victorian Harvest Tea, and the Hillary House Ball. We saw through the completion of the critical restoration of the Hillary House veranda, and we participated in a 2-month-long Launchpad coaching grant through the National Trust for Canada, focused on fundraising strategies for historic sites. Next slide. So how did we do? The goals on the left were presented in the budget meeting in November of 2021. We had planned for 25 programs. We were actually able to implement 41, a very successful year for us. We planned to present 3 exhibitions, and we did this through our partnerships. We plan to increase our online presence and community engagement, which we did, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. Aim to provide about 3,000 hours in volunteer opportunities, and we provided about 3,100. We plan to welcome 1,000 people to Hillary House, and we were extremely pleased to open Hillary House again and welcome over 1,100. We educated the community through 4 outreach programs, and we funded and executed critical restoration work on the veranda and worked with ERA architects on a feasibility study for the restoration of the Hillary House summer kitchen. And finally, we said we would investigate large-scale funding opportunities, and we did secure a $25,000 donation from the Koffler Foundation for restoration work. However, we do continue to have impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. We do see a fluctuation in program engagement and revenue due to the uncertainty of visitors and the COVID-19 waves of illness, and decreased volunteer engagement and opportunities and volunteer hesitancy because of COVID-19. However, we are still increasing our online presence that brings in new audiences and therefore more community awareness. Next. For our KPIs, in 2022, we saw an increase in engagement over most of the KPIs when compared to 2021. Less COVID-19 restrictions led to more in-person programs and outreach opportunities, which then saw wider in-person reach. We did see an over 200% increase in people welcome to Hillary House when compared to 2021. We were able to be open for more of the year, and a significant increase in people engaged through our outreach since those events didn't run in 2021. Next. Although there was volunteer hesitancy due to the remaining COVID-19 concerns, we did see an increase in volunteer hours contributed in 2022, which was back closer to pre-COVID levels, but not quite as high as in 2019. And our online followers are down slightly, only by about 30 followers. This is most likely due to Twitter's concentrated effort in removing bots from their site, but we do see a steady increase in Facebook and Instagram followers, which is where we see a lot of our engagement. And we did see a 50% increase in online engagements in 2022 with 31,245. We do continue to face ongoing challenges, including meeting critical maintenance needs for Hillary House, as well as funding those restoration projects. Continuing with grounds maintenance, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the town for their assistance in removing a hazardous tree from the property. You can see in that top photo there, a beautiful 200-year-old maple, but dangerous to the house itself. And we do continue to face challenges with staffing and volunteer engagement, including filling board positions. We'd like to take this opportunity to recognize the many organizations of Aurora and the importance of partnerships. We are fortunate to be able to consider these organizations as our partners, and we will continue to foster partnerships while actively searching for new ones. And again, we are incredibly grateful to have the support of various community groups and businesses throughout 2022, and we thank all these businesses and organizations for their contributions. I like to put these up, some quotes on the screen, just a few statements of feedback from the community to show the positive impact of the AHS and the importance of Hillary House to the community. We do see a lot of locals who come in and say, I've driven past this for 15 years and I've never been in, and then they come back with the rest of their family or people from out of town. So it's always nice to see their feedback. So we'd like to present our 2023 goals. We plan to build on the successes of 2022. We plan to implement approximately 35 programs and special events. I'd like to point out the bottom photo there is our lovely board member, Michelle, and her group at our popular wreath making workshop. We plan to present 3 exhibitions, continue to use our online presence for community engagement, provide over 3,000 hours in volunteer opportunities. And again, that top photo is our youth cleanup day. So, opportunities for all age and abilities. Continue to welcome visitors into Hillary House and educate the community through outreach programs, and as well as to continue to fund and execute comprehensive action plan for restoration of Hillary House. Now, I'd like to pass it over to our treasurer and co-president, Jeffrey Dodd, to speak about the financials.
Thank you, Kathleen, and good evening, members of Budget Committee. Once again, it's as Bruce expressed earlier, it's a real pleasure to be back live. No one has to tell me to unmute, and we don't all of a sudden lose our connection in the middle, and then the mayor has to tell me where I left off. So we do appreciate the opportunity to be live. Al already thanked council, and certainly I echo our thanks for the support of council for the Aurora Historical Society. I also want to point out our thanks to staff. So Kathleen pointed out the picture with the tree being removed. That was arranged through Mr. Downey's group. And I'd like to thank Robin and Jason for their assistance as we move forward and prepared the budget for this year. The slide up here, very similar to last year, shows our 2022 funding sources. donations, memberships, gift shop sales. Surprisingly, gift shop sales remain strong. If you're looking for that unique teacup, we encourage you to come over. Fundraising events, rentals, Canada Summer Job Grant, Community Museum Operating Grant, and of course, the Town of Aurora Operating Grant. We were not expecting emergency funding this year. We still did receive, there was still some COVID emergency funding. So we received a business support grant in the form, of an energy cost rebate, the Ontario Small Business Relief Grant, and the Recovery Fund for Heritage Organizations through Museum Assistance Program. So we're very grateful for those. Slide. This shows our 2020 or 2021 audited numbers. Our 2022 unaudited at this point, although given that we were able to prepare this presentation very late in the year, we don't expect a lot of change from this slide to our audited returns and then our forecast for next year. We were very successful in receiving last year a number of grants, and our operating revenue of $2,800 is slightly higher than we've seen in the past, due in part increase in admission and programming revenue. So we've managed to sneak that up a snort. We are well aware of our responsibility to be as proactive as possible in our own fundraising. And we did have two fairly successful fundraising events over and above the tees that Kathleen referred to. We had a golf tournament in June at the Westview Golf and Country Club, and the Hillary House Ball, which was held in October at the Royal Venetian. And we thank members of council who were able to make it out to one or both of those. And there were staff members there as well. We continue to receive emergency relief grants, as I've already pointed out, as well as the $25,000 donation from the Koffler Foundation. So those lines are higher than normal. The result is that we're projecting we will finish 2022 with an excess of revenue over expenses of approximately $70,000. It has been the policy of the AHS to transfer a portion of the surplus to our restricted building and grounds fund, and that gets determined at our annual general meeting. Unfortunately, our 2023 forecast shows a deficit of approximately $10,000. As we come to terms with the post-COVID world, certainly we don't expect any emergency funding this year. Like many other organizations, we have found it difficult to raise more funds. We're finding that to be quite a challenge. The board will, of course, continue to monitor this, and we look for ways to mitigate, any negative in that column. Finally, our budget request shows that we are again requesting an additional $3,700 for the Godfrey collection. Linda? The Godfrey collection is a collection that we've had for a number of years. It was originally stored by the town. And then as the Library Square project took hold, we moved that to a storage facility in Newmarket, Apple Storage, a climate control facility, which was covered by the town, and we're certainly appreciative of that. We are asking for that again this year. This year, however, what we plan on doing is bringing that collection back to Hillary House. We plan on bringing it back in either February or March of this year. And our plan is to, and Kathleen is doing this right now, looking into getting an intern who will go through the process of cataloging that collection, get a better handle on what we have, and then investigate options as to the best method to process that collection in the future. And we hope to be in a much better position, perhaps to update council by June of this year as to where that process is going. So that is our ask for this year, which is, where'd it go? I lost my money. $83,327, which was supplied to us by staff, and then the $3,700 for the Godfrey collection. And I will now turn this back over to Kathleen, and certainly would look forward to any questions, at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, and I'll wrap it up. So thanks, Jeff. So this slide lists the restoration projects that we have identified as priorities, but as Jeff mentioned, we are working to determine which are most critical while considering our ability to execute and fund them. Moving forward, as we move through 2023, we will continue with our fundraising efforts and plans for restoration to ensure the physical future of Hillary House, and we will continue offering engaging programming and educational exhibits that make the AHS and Hillary House a community hub and place for learning. And we'd like to end our presentation with this quote from Thomas Wicks at the Ontario Heritage Trust on the importance of Hillary House and the AHS. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Council recommendations that the Aurora Historical Society Board presentation be received. And 2, that the request for the 2023 operating grant to the Aurora Historical Society Board in the amount of $87,100 be tentatively approved. Someone like to move that? Councillor Weiss, Councillor Thompson. Comments or questions? Councillor Gardner, did you have your hand up?
Yes, Mr. Yes, Mr. Mayor, for a question.
Yep, go ahead.
It just occurred to me as I was listening that Dr. Godfrey was quite well-known doctor in the Toronto Society of the time. I believe he was friendly with Mr. Koffler, and that's how this association ended up for Hillary House. It's not directly related to Hillary House, though, although it is history and heritage. I'm wondering if anybody has thought about getting in touch with the Godfrey family to see if they might be interested in putting in something, I mean, in one of Canada's historic sites, putting in something that would be a more respectful way, permanent way to store these books at Hillary House.
Kathleen?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Gertner. Yes, you're correct. Charles Godfrey was friends with Murray Koffler, who was one of our major initial funders. And yeah, I that's a great idea. Charles Godfrey actually passed last August, I think, or July, at age 106 or something incredible. Yeah, it's definitely an option. We are looking at this point to have the collection cataloged. We're not 100% sure what it is comprised of. We have a very old inventory that needs to be updated so we can kind of better assess what it is and where it is and how to move forward with it. But definitely a great idea to approach them and maybe have some luck. Yeah, thanks.
Councillor?
Thank you. And maybe even through the Koffler Foundation, as they were generous, very generous with their donation of $25,000. Thank you. And it would be interesting to see what's in that collection, because I think there might be duplicates of some books, and then it would be nice to know, what part of the collection is that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Before I get to a question for the Historical Society, just to clarify the motion, I believe you said that the motion was to request funding of $87,100. Just to be clear, they came before us for $87,027. I don't mean to be the bad guy here, but
I'm just reading what's on my agenda, so
yeah.
we can make that adjustment, Councillor.
So my question through you to former Mayor Daw, since you are the treasurer, just regards to fundraising. You spoke about in 2021 and in 2022, you had some successful fundraising initiatives, and yet I see for the forecast for 2023, you've only allocated $25,000. Do you not anticipate having as much success fundraising going forward, or were you just wanting to put a more, I guess, a reasonable number that you were sure you could hit, and anything over that would just be a surplus, or to at least offset the deficit?
Mr. Daw?
Through you, sir. Councillor Thompson, thank you. I can always rely on you for a good financial question. Thank you very much. We would like to budget higher for fundraising. We want to put some realism there. At this point, we're only planning 2 significant events, which would be a Scotch tasting coming up sometime in the next couple of months, and then a golf tournament again in June. We are not planning on having the Hillary House Ball this year. It's very intensive, labor intensive, and quite frankly, like many other organizations, we're starting to suffer from volunteer burnout. So rather than try and plan it and not be able to deliver an outstanding event, we're not planning for this year. As I said, we will certainly keep an eye on that. We don't want to go into any year with a negative budget, but we also need to be realistic in terms of what our expectations are and to be able to fundraise to any significant degree this year.
Counselor?
Thank you. And as I've expressed earlier tonight, again, to all the members of the board and your staff, kudos for, managing these challenging times. I know that especially for a museum where, the touch and feel of artifacts is an attraction. It's been a difficult go, I'm sure, for you, but at least good job for trying. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Weiss?
Thank you. I'd like to ask a couple more questions around the Godfrey collection, if you don't mind. First of all, you mentioned the curatorial services, and those are, of course, all included in the expenses that you've got listed here. So, and could you give me an idea of what that number is?
Kathleen?
Through you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Yeah, so we're estimating around $25,000 for.
I'm sorry, I don't want to jump in, but through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Weiss, the potential of an intern is not included in these numbers. That would be something over and above. We're still investigating that process, just to be perfectly clear.
Okay. Thank you. Counselor?
Thank you. As we heard before, we don't see any 2019 comparatives. Do you have some advice to us or some observations of what happened in 2019 and considering 2020, 21 as being odd years? Do you have some information about 19?
Kathleen?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we're at about, we're getting back up, definitely better than 2020 and 2021 with attendance in person at Hillary House. About half of 2019's visitorship was about 3,500. This year we had about 1,100, but that's to be expected with the hesitancy. And the only other one that's down is volunteer hours. Again, we had about 4,200 volunteer hours contributed in 2019 and only about, I think, 3,600 in 2022, but definitely up from the beginning of the COVID years. Yeah.
Thank you.
Counselor?
And through you, Mr. Mayor, you have this curious question mark about restoration costs in 2023 that just has a question mark in it. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that question mark may mean?
Kathleen or Adam or Jeff, which Adam?
Alan.
Oh, Alan, sorry. I
Adam
don't know
is
why I'm thinking
my
Adam.
successful cousin. No, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I would say that at this point, we have had a couple of studies done by ERA architects, as we noted in the presentation. We've had a little bit of shock just in terms of the potential restoration costs of some of the items that we identified. I think as a board, we kind of sat back and said, okay, we have to be very thoughtful in terms of what that actual priority might look like. So at this point, it really isn't funded other than the grant that the matching grant that the town was kind enough to put forward last year. But I think it really is a word of caution from the board saying we've got to be very, very careful as to what those priorities might be, given some of the significant numbers that they were projecting in terms of some of the restorations. And our learning, quite frankly, was the veranda. And we had a bit of a shock even being able to fund the veranda project, which we were able to do successfully. But even that gave the board a little bit of a cautious pause at the time to say we have to be very, very careful as to what we might be able to afford going forward.
Counselor?
Thank you. One last thing, I'm still interested in the impact of this Godfrey collection and the understanding of the money of it. Right now, my understanding is that there's a rental fee for the collection being in storage. And that's around $3,700. And so my question around that, and there's additional costs of up to $25,000 for the curation of it. So I'd just like to get an idea of the impact of this, why this is so important, so that this is becomes an important thing for the Historical Society to do.
Jeff?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Weiss, thank you. I'll let Kathleen speak to the technical aspects of managing the collection, because there are criteria that we have to go through because we've received it. It has been sitting in storage now. So the original plan was to move it into the new cultural center, the new addition. And there's been questions, rightly so, as to what is the significance of this collection to the town of Aurora. We cannot properly answer that question without going through and cataloging the collection, something that we have not been able to do. So Kathleen, through her research, has found an opportunity where we will ideally be able to cover about 50% of an intern salary with a grant. So we're speculating around $25,000 to hire an intern to do this cataloging project. It's going to take months, of which we could receive a grant for somewhere between $12,000 and $13,000. So what we would do is we would turn that $3,700, even though we're probably going to be out of Apple storage by the end of February, we would turn the rest of that in as part of the funding towards that intern. And if I may turn this over to Kathleen just to talk specifically about our obligations.
Absolutely. Kathleen?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, like Jeff said, we don't know exactly what the collection is comprised of. At this point, the first step is to have it officially cataloged so that we get a good understanding. And then we can plan for what happens to it in the future. We need to understand what the value of it for sure is. We have, old documents from 2001 saying it's incredibly significant, and not that we don't believe that, but we need to be able to back that up and then come with kind of a more comprehensive action plan on to, okay, what do we do with this? Where's the best place for it? How can it be the most accessible to the public as a research collection as possible, whether that's here or somewhere else.
Councillor?
Thank you. And just last, if I may, through you, I'd like to congratulate the AHS and the board, the members, the staff for the work that you do in trying to maintain this national treasure in this community. I have some connections to the Hillary family themselves, and I'm sure they're proud of the work that's being done here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you very much. Well, I think most of my heard there. So thank you, Councillor Weiss. I don't really have very much. I know that you guys have been extremely frugal over the last few years with your budget. I know you've scaled back, and I know we were tough on you, especially in 2019, and boom, you had the pandemic. I know that Patricia, at the time, I know she's now retired, but had really scavenged for some great granting opportunities as much as she possibly could to keep this thing going afloat. So I really do appreciate all the hard work, because I know you guys weren't really working with very much, and you continue to have these constraints, especially with the big question mark with your restoration. You just don't really know what to expect. And so, I do appreciate that, you are coming back at status quo, if not under, and also requesting the Godfrey collection, which is over and above something a little bit different. And I think we're anticipating this, so it's not really much of a surprise, but we see it on the budget now. So I think most of my questions were answered based on the Godfrey collection. But it's sad to see the ball go. But I do look forward to the golf events. I think that it's a very successful one. I was there this summer, and I look forward to participating in more of that and keeping the Hillary House a national treasure in Aurora like it is. So thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the delegates, thank you for delegating tonight. And the question is, a few years ago, when we were trying to expand Aurora's tourism activities and drawing more people into Aurora and gain more foot traffic, now I'm not sure who spearheaded that one, but we partnered with other municipalities and York Region because there are many other municipalities and communities like us that we need to just kind of connect with to kind of gain some leverage within the collective. Is there such a community that exists in the historical societies within? And based on your smile, I guess there is, and you're already participating in something like that.
Kathleen?
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we are part of the York Durham Museums and Heritage Archival Sites. That was not the right name, but yeah, we do have kind of a networking group, and we do occasionally do kind of projects together. Through COVID, mostly that's shut down as various museums aren't operating at the operations that they were pre-pandemic. But we do try to partner with other kind of community organizations as much as possible. Like I was talking about with our exhibitions and our programming. Last year, we kind of focused mostly on Aurora, but we do like to, try as much as possible to kind of reach out to other community partners to share resources and combine.
Counselor?
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you for coming. We obviously, as was mentioned many times, we appreciate the work that the board does. All of you do tremendous work, and obviously the Hillary House is an asset that we want to ensure that is around for another 150, 200, 300 years. So that's why it's important that we all work together to make sure that that asset is continuously there for all future generations to appreciate and have an understanding of where it came from in the past. So thank you for all the work that you do, and thank you for coming this evening. Council, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next, 6.1.4, Aurora Sports Hall of Fame 2023 Operating Grant. Presentation to be provided by Javed Khan, President, and Brian Roberts, Treasurer. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, Town of Aurora staff, and those watching online, my name is Javed Khan. I'm the President and Chair of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. And accompanying me tonight are a few folks. We have new volunteer Lisa Cook. We also have with Brian Roberts, our treasurer. But behind me here, we have also Sharon Kelly, who's become a favorite of ours. She's one of our quite a nice donor she did in 2022. So we appreciate that, Sharon. And you see the gentleman to my right, Dave Giroux, is one of our newest Hall of Famers for 2022. On behalf of the organization, I'd like to wish everyone a healthy and safe new year and congratulate council members on their re-election, and to Ron Weiss on your election as the newest member of Town Council. We look forward to continuing our work and collaboration together in 2023. The purpose of our presence tonight is twofold. First, to briefly share our highlights of 2022, and to second, review our budget operating grant for 2023. The Aurora Sports Hall of Fame is a celebration of all forms of sport, young and old, with able bodies as well with those with physical and mental challenges. It is both a physical and virtual place of history to stimulate pride in our community's accomplishment. Our physical location is at the Sark at 1400 Wellington Street East. To date, we have inducted 44 outstanding athletes, builders, coaches, and individuals such as Lois Thompson, Dave Giroux, Paulina Allen, Mike Palmetier, Frank Stronach, Karen and Brian Stemmel, Ryan and Dave Gardner, Lowell McClellan, to just name a few. Do keep in mind that the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame is operated by a team of volunteers who have a rich appreciation for the goodness of sport, through which all Auroran residents can feel a sense of belonging, thrive, and celebrate. And we can't thank enough the partnership we've had from our largest and long-standing partner, the Town of Aurora. Yeah, just keep it to that one. 2020, no, back. Yep, thanks. 2022 was a year of community outreach for our organization, and what a year it was. And I'd like to review some of the highlights. For the first half of 2022, we kicked off with our presence at the Aurora Chamber of Commerce Mayor's Luncheon and State of the Union Address. We continued and activated a monthly presence at the Aurora Farmers Market and Artisan Fair. And then we continued to participate at events hosted by the Aurora Chamber of Commerce, including their annual street festival, their annual members barbecue, and their Women of Influence Network luncheon. And in mid-May, I stood at this podium alongside our chair of the induction committee and introduced the inductees of the class of 2022. Our second half activities continue with our monthly participation at the Aurora Farmers Market and Artisan Fair. We also continue to participate in chamber events, including their annual Golf Day, the Business Excellence Award, and their annual Holiday Mix and Jingle. As 2022 came to a close, we celebrated the launch of our first ever external sign on the Nukesark billboard, thanks to Robin McDougall for collaborating that and putting that together. And we also celebrated Stu Bundy, our Sport Aurora Volunteer Recognition recipient. I'm most proud of the moment when, for the very first time in our history, we presented a wreath on behalf of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame at the Remembrance Day ceremony with our friends from the Aurora Legion. I want to thank Lori Hoyes and Bonnie Robertson for the tremendous work they do for our community. We also want to thank Phil Rose, who is here with us tonight to take a number of our volunteers through a tour of Aurora Town Square initiative and talked about a number of things we could potentially have planned for not only this year, but the future. And we also want to remind everyone that we've got beer. We launched our very own labeled lager beer in collection with our friends at the Red Thread Brewing Company. Next one. And of course, our main event on November 10th, as we celebrated our 9th annual induction celebration evening presented by Geranium. An evening we celebrated the next group of inductees. In presence is Dave Giroux, builder contributor of baseball. Posthumously Colin Pop Nesbitt, builder contributor of golf, who's represented by Mike Nesbitt. Mark DiGirolamo, athlete from rugby, and Janice Jones, athlete from swimming. We also introduced the next Aurora Sports Hall of Fame future Hall of Famers in Sam Mitchell for baseball and sisters Blanca and Cezanne Lodi, both track and field. Tonight, we are officially launching and announcing an invitation to everyone to join us with our MC Rod Black to our 10th annual induction celebration evening on Thursday, November the 2nd at the Royal Venetian Mansion. We're asking the community that if you have someone you feel needs to be considered as a candidate for the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, please visit our website and review the process and requirements along with the nominations cover application. There is a plan to host a nomination information session in the coming month. Mr. Mayor and members of council, what a year it was. Our participation and hosting of events like our induction celebration evening cannot have happened without the support of our volunteers and the financial support of our sponsors, including the town of Aurora. This year, we have a wide variety of initiatives planned, including the reactivation of our education programs, going back into the schools, activities celebrating our 10th year anniversary, and of course, our 10th annual induction celebration evening, to name a few. To help understand our request for funding, I asked Brian Roberts now to review our 2023 budget operating grant submission.
Thank you, Javid. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors, town staff, and other guests. As you just heard, we've had a very busy year at the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. We've submitted an operating budget which outlines the organization's needs for the next 4 years. As you can see, actually, could you move the slide? There's a couple slides down where it shows the years across. That's the 2023. That it? I saw it in the presentation. Go down. As you can see, we are aiming to grow the overall revenues organically by increasing attendance and sponsorship at our annual induction celebration evening events. Over the past year, we've really focused on reaching out to the community as detailed from Javid, partnering and supporting other local organizations, which allowed us to increase our awareness of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. Then we constantly are looking for grant opportunities and adding events that would help the organization raise funds to become self-sustaining. Over the past couple of years through the pandemic, we had to pause our induction celebration evening event and tighten our spending. We also had to put our education programs in schools on hold as we weren't allowed in any schools. In 2021, we were able to move $12,940 towards our operating reserve to assist with financial stability for future unexpected events. In early 2022, as difficult as it was, we chose to discontinue the executive assistant role in the organization to help reduce our costs. Now, moving into the future, we are faced with increasing cost pressures from inflation, the venue for our induction celebration evening, printing, storage, advertising, and communication costs such as our website management have all increased significantly moving forward. Please note that the figures in the 2021 historical column are slightly reduced in both revenue and expenses due to the pandemic. The financial information in 22 and beyond and beyond returns our expected revenue and expenses to the normal levels prior to the pandemic. You'll notice we kept our overall operating grant application to 3% increase over 2022 in the amount of $30,800 and a 2% thereafter in 2026. How have we been able to do this? Simply, the dedicated volunteers have helped us accomplish so much each year while keeping costs low. The use of these funds will allow us to continue to build our education program, including the second in the comic book series, ensure that we have the necessary funds to continue our mandate to honor, celebrate, preserve, and share the rich Aurora sports culture history, along with the initiatives we've talked about, including a few events to commemorate our 10-year anniversary. On behalf of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, I want to thank you for the support in the past, and I look forward to working together and collaborating in the future. Just let me know if there's.
Thank you. Council recommendations that the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame presentation be received, and 2, that the request for the 2023 operating grant to the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame in the amount of $30,800 be tentatively approved. Someone like to move that? Councillor Thompson? Councillor Kim? Comments or questions? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Thank you very much. 2021 in your budget looks like it's actuals. 2022, the numbers are a little too round to be actuals. Do you have I'm assuming, and maybe you'll correct me if I'm wrong, do you have 2022 actuals?
Brian?
I'm just waiting for a few more costs to come in, and we are going to show a small surplus again in 2022.
Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, do you know when you'd have those?
Brian?
I should be able probably by next week.
Next week.
Councillor?
Could you share those, Mr. Mayor, with us when you have them?
Brian, could we get that shared, send an email to council?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Could you also do any previous years, 2020, 2019?
Yeah, I could
Right.
send that all
Okay.
out.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Weiss?
Thanks. And through you, Mayor and Chair. I appreciated what the historical societies did about their audited and unaudited statements. You are a charitable organization, are you not? Okay. And so therefore you have the access to those audited statements that have done in previous years as well as this year?
Brian?
Okay, thank you.
Councillor?
I'm just finding some difficulty here in details. So just bear with me, if you will. The costs for your, I think, and what I'm seeing here is 14,200 in 2022, I assume, for education. With the schools closed, where were those dollars spent? Because I assume that that's being done in the schools program. Correct me if I'm wrong, through you, Mayor.
Brian?
Yeah, I think that's going to show up when I produce the 2022 financials for you to show you exactly where all those funds.
And so then
Councillor?
through you, Mayor, also the detail around the communications that you have at $12,500. It seems an awful lot in consideration the entire amount. So that will be in those statements as well.
Brian? Thank you. Councillor?
And same question then about executive expenses. I just find that there's not a lot of detail in here. So I'm just hoping that we can ask you, Mayor, that make sure that those statements are coming to us.
So the executive expenses are basically the overall expenses to run the organization. Oh, sorry. Like in there, it's kind of the administration costs of the organization. There's costs such as fees and memberships, insurance costs, accounting costs. There's board development and promotional items in there.
And my understanding, Councillor, I'll just jump in from Councillor Gallo's questions, and what we heard from Brian is that we'll get the actuals. These are just what was approved.
Thank you.
We'll get the actuals,
Great.
which will answer, I hope will answer some of the questions that you brought up.
Thanks very much. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah, definitely looking at the historical numbers is something that's very important. I do know that I did speak to you or providing that, and I think it's prudent that the rest of council does take a look at that to see where we are. I do understand that the town has incurred some funding for the curation through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. McDougall. The town did take over close to $20,000 as far as part of the budget in curation after the nomination. If you could just touch on that, please.
Ms. McDougall?
Yes, certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. Back in 2018, there was a discussion. The Sports Hall of Fame at that time was outsourcing the curatorial work for the hall, and subsequently through negotiation with the understanding, we obviously have a museum staff with that has the skill set in-house to provide those services. A portion of the Hall of Fame's budget was pulled off of their annual budget requests and retained by the town at a total of $20,000. That was broken out 10 in administrative costs to facilitate the induction expenditures that the staff would have facilitated for material supplies that relate to the archival work. And then 10,000 for staff time that related to the time involved in supporting the museum, or sorry, the Hall of Fame. And that's been going in since 2018.
Councillor?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And given the fact that we do have, through Mr. Mayor to Ms. McDougall, we do have this at a facility, it's in a town facility, the lights are on, we provide all that kind of service. Is that something taken consideration as well as a cost?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is not a line item that is applied to the 20,000. Our facility is operational regardless of the hall being in that place, so we don't hive off a portion to be applied to the 20,000.
Councillor?
Thank you. Appreciate that. I guess my comment is, looking at, obviously I support the Sports Hall of Fame. I think it's a great thing. And I think the municipality is very unique in the sense that we do things that are very special with celebration of sport, more so than say other municipalities that may just, present a plaque and hang it on a wall and that's that. So I do recognize we go above and beyond, and I do think that's wonderful. And I know council did also really support that going forward, showing support with funding as well. And I think there was also a budget item of 77,000 that also contributed to installation of a sign and some other there's some other stuff within the, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. McDougall, through the actual facility that we actually spent money on as well.
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly there was financial and a capital project related to the Hall of Fame and investment in the enhancing signage, enhancing a presence. Certainly a lot of those, the wall feature as you first enter the facility with the wall wrap that's at the front of the building to draw attention, pointing people down the hall, trying to getting people to recognize that the hall existed. And that also included interior signage and exterior. We knowing that the pylon sign was coming, albeit it's been a while since the budget originally was approved. There was a portion of that was held to assist in ensuring that we had a home of sign promoted the Hall of Fame that was within the SARC.
Councillor?
Thank you. And, following up on that comment, the town has been extremely supportive and council's been extremely supportive of this initiative, and I want to see this succeed. My question to you and your organization as council and the town has been giving you funds is how do you see yourself in the future being able to become more self-sufficient, considering that the town does already carry a lot of and bear a lot of the cost for the operations of the Sports Hall of Fame. So how do you see yourself down the road relying less on the town?
Brian?
So we have a team of volunteers now that's kind of put forward to do fundraising. And our plan is to develop maybe perhaps another event or add some extra grant, look for extra grant money that might be available to us.
Counselor?
Thank you. And so from what I understand as well is that because you have an education program, that's what allows you to be considered that charitable status. And so have you been able to acquire any grant money to date? And if so, is there any numbers that you could provide to council?
Brian?
I've gotten a $5,000 grant for our comic book series, the first start of it.
Counselor?
Sorry, was that like this year?
It was in, I believe it was in 2021.
Thank you. So not for 2022, and you're not predicting for 2023 any granting opportunities for your education? I'm just trying to get a sense because I feel like there should be that effort there. And I guess where I'm getting at is, you know, I know that we have a dinner and we have sales and we have fundraising. You guys have been very successful on your sponsorships. It's been absolutely fantastic. There's no doubt about that. But again, I'm just looking down the road about if we are going to be funding you some cash to keep this afloat with the communication and the office expenses and the executive expenses and such. What are the efforts moving forward with that, those granting opportunities, since education is kind of your main goal?
Javid?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Gilliland. Let me just expand on Brian's comment. Yes, we constantly are looking for grant opportunities. Matter of fact, we're in a conversation. We have a board meeting this week, and we are in a conversation with a partner who has put a fairly comprehensive proposal together that's gone through our executive team. Now it's going to come to the board this Wednesday, and it's all based on fundraising. It's all based on both federal and provincial grant, plus foundational grant, plus direct mail communications. We're going to go through that at the board meeting with the intent to look at what are the priorities so that, as you mentioned, and I agree with you 100%, what things can we do now that we're moving out of this post-pandemic world that we can look at to start to raise funds to continue not only the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, but also, to your point, to find ways to self-sustain. And so we're looking at those types. We have an initiative that has been approved by the board at the end of December, which we will be announcing shortly, that will provide some raising of funds, some really nice raising of funds this year. Plus, we've got our 10-year anniversary celebration that we're going to start to talk about, which will include some fundraising activities, because we've been asked a few times by people, and some of them around the table, to do a sit-down dinner. So this could be an opportunity for us to do a sit-down dinner just specifically celebrating 10 years of the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame, and also be a fundraiser at the same time. And that'll be something very different, and we're hoping separate from the induction celebration evening. So there are constant conversations when it comes to Kristen and her group. There is a conversation right now with the town and Haley, the new person who's joined the team, to discuss some fundraising opportunities and collaborative opportunities amongst themselves from an education standpoint. But Kristen does have in her plan and with the committee, which Lisa's also part of, to talk about not only going to schools, but what other things can we do collaboratively that we can get the education program out, including not only one, but now possibly 2 or 3 tournaments, maybe a hockey one, a baseball one, a basketball one that we can do with our schools. So there's constant conversation with that vision, as you say, Councillor Gilliland, to find opportunities to raise some funds. So we're moving down that path.
Councillor?
Thank you. And all those initiatives sound great. I can't wait to hear what they're all about. And I'm glad to hear there's some initiatives moving forward. So I do appreciate that. Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Roberts or Mr. Khan, do you currently have a reserve right now that you collect for your organization?
Brian?
We do have a reserve in a bank account, and the current value of that is about 75,000.
Councillor?
Thank you. And so, I mean, it sounds like you guys are on a good train moving forward, and you guys have obviously proven some great success. I would like to see some KPIs. I didn't see any KPIs to kind of show the engagement levels, how people are interacting with it. It would be really good to know what those are, what those growth levels are from 2019 as well, and where we are now, because it kind of really helps us set a tone of what we're looking for down the road. Again, I like to kind of see like how you can become more self-sufficient So, would it be prudent for us to say, okay, we can, grant you this funding with some parameters around that, to where the additional any revenue above that has been collected that would go back to the town, and that would be a way to at least slowly be more self-sufficient. Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Roberts, is that something that your organization could sustain with those parameters?
Brian?
Yeah, we maintain we're a revenue neutral organization, so we're not out to make money. We're just out to cover our costs. So that's completely fine.
Counselor?
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And that gives me a lot more comfort knowing that option is there, that that parameter could be there and would work for you. And sounds like you guys are doing, again, like a great job, and I want to see it successful, but at the same time, responsibly see it grow in a way that becomes more self-sufficient. And with the granting opportunities, as you guys have spoken about, it seems like there's stuff there that's available. So hopefully tonight, that's something that we can negotiate. Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Thompson?
Thank you. My question was similar with respect to just other sources of funding and seeking out grants and looking at other levels of governments, and both Javid and Brian did a great job of answering it from Councillor Gilliland's questions. So nothing further.
Thank you. Counselor Reese, second time.
Thank you.
Oh, well, sorry, Counselor Reese. I'm going to go to Counselor Gardner. She hasn't spoken yet. I just saw her hand up. I'll come back to you. Counselor Gardner?
Thank you,
First
Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Khan, you mentioned that you had to let one of your staff go or decrease your staffing level. How has that affected you, and who's picking up the slack?
Javid?
It's we found other ways to spread the wealth, as they say. So there's some other volunteers who've stepped up, including Brian, myself, and some others in our board team. So we're plugging along. There are certainly some things that have been delayed. We wanted to always digitize our files that we've had from day one. We haven't had the opportunity to do that. So just last week, Kristen did apply for a Canada Summer Jobs grant. We had a meeting with Mr. Van Bynen and his staff. So got some great insight from them, filled out the application, and she sent it in, and we shall wait, because that whole position is focused in on more administrative work, including digitizing these boxes of material we've had since 2013.
Counselor?
Thank you. Good luck with that. That would make a big difference, I'm sure. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Reese, second time.
Yeah, most of the questions through you, Mayor Marakis, were asked and answered. And Mr. Khan also brought up the 10th anniversary, which is an important milestone. And so I want to wish them well on the 10th anniversary. This is an important aspirational and inspirational thing that's being done in this community. And it's important to see that it moves forward and continues to do the good job that it has done in the past. But I do agree with Councillor Gilliland that sustainability is important. Back in the day when it was first brought forward to this council, the idea was that it was going to be self-sustained in a number of years. We didn't put a target on it. So I think it'd be interesting to have that target put on it. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Reese. I'll just remind everyone, I think when the cultural center first came, I think they mentioned they were going to be self-sustaining as well. So, and look where we are today. But beyond that, thank you very much for coming this evening. I mean, obviously, Sports Hall of Fame is probably, and I think I've said this before, it's probably one of the best. I know I'm biased across probably the GTHA, but I also did want to acknowledge and thank Councillor Weiss for being there at the beginning and putting it all together with everyone. So thank you for that, because we do have one of the best Hall of Fames. And I think the continuous work to promote our athletes in our community at the high excellence that they have achieved in their profession is an excellent way to encourage our young kids to continue to take up the sports and know that they can achieve the highest and the greatest level in that sport. And they've seen it from here, from athletes in the town of Aurora. So thank you for what you guys do. I appreciate it. And we're looking forward to many more Hall of Fame inductees and inductee dinners. So thank you very much. Call a vote. You always can make an amendment, Counselor. What amendment would you like?
Well, more or less just adding that parameters around that the funding, that if there is excess revenue, that'd be paid back to the town.
Someone would like to second that? Counselor Weiss? Okay. Any comments or questions on the amendment? I'll just say I hope we do that for everybody. That's my comment. I'll call the vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Counselor Gardner, where are you?
I'm opposed, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That fails. Back to the main motion. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. 6.1.5 Aurora Cultural Center Board 2023 operating grant. Actually, Mr. Clerk, I think you flagged me for a break. Council, did you want to waive the break or did you want to take a 10-minute break and then come back? Or just keep going?
No.
Break. Okay, we're going to do a break. Sorry, guys, we're going to do a break. We'll come right back, okay? 10 minutes. Procedural. Got to do it. Counselor? Counselor Kemp? $6.1.5 Aurora Cultural Center Board 2023 operating grant. We have a presentation to be provided by Eric Acker, President, and Suzanne Haynes, Executive Director, and Laura Hostick, Treasurer. Welcome.
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of council, town staff, thank you for this opportunity to present our 2022 operations and 2023 budget, 2023 to 2026, actually, budget this evening. My name is Eric Acker. I'm the president of the Aurora Cultural Center. I'm the chair of the board. And joining me tonight are Suzanne Haynes, our executive director. She will take you through our presentation. And our treasurer and board member, Laura Hostick, who will be here to help answer any questions with the presentation. Also with us in council chambers are members of our board, some of our staff, and some supporters of the Aurora Cultural Center. We appreciate them being here. If I could just make a comment before speaking to our budget presentation, in particular hearing some of the previous submissions. Each year we struggle for a way to outline our successes in our programming year, given the time available to present to you on the budget. Suzanne will provide you with a slide deck of the activities that show the value and the impact we have in the community, but she is going to zip through those slides very quickly in order to get to the budget conversation. So we hope that perhaps there may be a better way or a better time to be able to share our multifaceted and deep impact as we move closer in partnership in Aurora Town Square. Our successes are in large measure a result of your continued support of the Aurora Cultural Center. And we see also value in being able to speak to you outside of a budget setting where we can get feedback from you as to new ideas and new initiatives that we might undertake. So I'm actually here tonight to advocate for two things in the budget. In our presentation, you will see a request for a base level increase. This supplemental base level increase has been recognized as necessary to the operations of the Aurora Cultural Center and has been funded annually in 2020, 2021, and 2022 through one-time funding. Tonight, we're here with a formal ask to add it to our base, with the knowledge and recognition that this funding is key to our survivability. Those of you who have been on our board and current council, 4 of you have sat on our board in the past or currently, you know that we budget very close to net zero. We don't budget any contingencies or any contributions to reserves. And you know that we work very hard for the funds we receive and use it to deliver on programs that make our community a better place to live. What we're asking for is a historical figure that was identified and funded before any new governance conversation started with the town. And I respectfully request that an additional motion to include this increase in our base by the amounts indicated in Suzanne's presentation. Second item is a second request for an amendment to the motion in 6.1.5 number 3. The Aurora Cultural Center has a signed legal document with the town regarding the relocation of our operations due to the Aurora Town Square project. And that agreement is pretty clear that if we have to incur expenses such as having to pay rent at the Armory or pay rent at St. Andrew's College to do events, those costs will be covered by the town, which allows us to maintain our programming. It's our understanding that these costs are funded through the Aurora Town Square operating budget. The motion as worded today does not match with our agreement, and we're asking for new wording that mirrors the expectations in that signed legal agreement. I'll now hand the mic over to Suzanne Haynes, our executive director, to take you through the presentation.
Thank you, Eric. As mentioned, we'll quickly go through our profile for those who may not know us so well, review our 2022 programs, and spend more time on our 2022 KPI reporting and the budget. Our mission, vision, and core values have remained relevant and meaningful to our operations. Our programming continues to respond to the community demand for professional performing arts, visual arts, and education programs that support learning in both of those two disciplines. In COVID, we shifted to virtual programs where possible as 2022 started in a lockdown and rescheduled what we could. We continue to offer in-person, virtual, and live streaming programs. And now on to our programming. Next slide. Gallery exhibitions opened to the public in March, and we hosted patrons at Town Hall in a limited capacity. Next slide. Our digital gallery continues to be very successful with resources put to capturing the full gallery in 3D and providing art bites. This year, we hosted two important public art projects. It's important to understand that public art is not a regular part of our programming. However, as we reinvest our financial success in the community, the board approved pursuing the Aurora Bell Box mural project in 2021, and we were able to complete it in 2022. This project partnered with CMHA York Simcoe to help with promotion and to support artists from their community be involved, and the town to support logistics, marketing, and to sponsor one of the 9 boxes. The Bell Boxes project built significant new partnerships and collaborations between Indigenous and non-Indigenous artists on each box. It also brought the community out to speak to the artists as they painted and generated significant community support, dialogue, and social media impact. These boxes are maintained by Bell and will be in our community for as long as the paint lasts. The hashtag of Hope and Healing Canada temporary public art project by Tracy May Chambers was deeply successful also. The project came to our attention in 2021, and we tried to fund it through economic development that year. However, we were successful in gaining a tourism relief grant fund in 2022 to greenlight the project and have the meaningful impact conversations about decolonization of our public spaces in this traveling exhibit. It was reported that almost 82,000 people moved through the Aurora Family Leisure Complex during the time this temporary exhibit was hosted in its lobby and front entrance. Art Bites are educational opportunities related to each exhibit. We have substantial viewing engagement from the community on these videos. Here are the statistics for the gallery program with a few items missing as this presentation uses statistics up until October. Our final numbers will be in our annual report. We were grateful to finally be able to reopen to visitors with programming that builds community conversations about what is meaningful to us as humans. And now on to our performing arts series. We started the year in lockdown and canceled or rescheduled the early concerts into the rest of the year. We were hosted at the Armory, St. Andrews College, and Trinity Anglican Church for our signature and RBC Emerging Artist series. Early in our recovery this year, we asked the community to indicate their comfort in returning through a post-it program. And we have all of those comments that are going to be collected and in our annual report as to how people are feeling about coming back after COVID. The Great Artist Music Series is our classical music series curated by award-winning co-artistic directors Bonnie and Norbert Kraft. In-person concerts were at Trinity Anglican Church. Our family series took place at Theatre Aurora and the Armory with Duffel Bag Theatre. The 2022-2023 productions are offered at no charge to the community through sponsorship and grant support. Productions for our youngest audience members, the Meridian Magic Carpet Series, is for toddlers and their families. COVID halted our production at the Aurora Chamber Home Show, but in 2022-2023, events are also made available to families free of charge due to sponsor and grant support. With COVID project funding support from the federal government and our professional association, we brought our first World Music Festival to Aurora, Constellations. Also funded through the federal government from post-COVID reopening funds, we returned throughout the community with Aurora Pops Up. Funded also by the federal government Tourism Relief Fund, we offered a symposium to hear from thought leaders in Indigenous, Black, newcomer, disability, and 2S LGBTQIA+ communities. We hosted 2 days of action, learning, participation, introspection, and sharing. As always, we participated in community-wide celebrations like the Multicultural Festival and Culture Days. Once again, we brought the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation to Aurora with inclusive messages from Métis and Inuit families, bringing songs, stories, dance, and deep learning to encourage thoughtful response for support of Indigenous causes. In all of our performing arts programs, in a year of rebirth from COVID and rebuilding, we brought the community together to be inspired and transformed in each event. Our 74 educational programs ran through 3 terms and 1 summer of camps for kids. Slowly and with smaller numbers at first, our students came back to class and started their learning journey again. Programs were held at Aurora Town Hall or at the Armory where it was not possible to host them at the Town Hall offices. Kaleidoscope in the Schools was back in schools in May, October, November, and December, with performances and workshops for JK to grade 4 kids. This program was delivered to almost 6,000 children from Aurora and a few schools north of Aurora in the first stage of our growth for this program. Our education and outreach programs continue to enlighten, inspire, transform, and build a creative community. As always, our volunteers have been working hard coming back after lockdown to help us deliver programs. They are part of the brain trust and backbone of our organization. And now on to our KPIs for 2022. Here we have offered you 2 perspectives of historical community participation. Of course, our statistics changed during COVID. The gray line represents total participation, with those coming for rental programs as we managed this program prior to Aurora Town Square governance conversations. The green line shows our program numbers since rentals will not be part of our portfolio moving forward. Here are the statistics just for 2022 as part of our KPIs. Our virtual gallery has been incredibly successful since its inception in 2020 and continues to grow. We also know there are more numbers to be added to this chart as we only had statistics until October. There's also no capture of the significant and deep impact of the Aurora Bell Boxes mural project, which has been seen by much of the community. Again, a historical reference for all of our programs, including rentals, performing arts, education, and gallery. We continue with our 2 revenue areas and projections for 2022, and they will be updated in our annual report as we only have data until October. This slide shows the growth of our outreach activities as part of our operations, a difference from previous years as our KITS program grows. We continue to have our education program as our largest revenue program. Our performing arts program grew with no charge events due to grants and sponsor contributions. We continue to prioritize allocation of funding to programs for the community. This measure is no longer used by the CRA to determine adequate resource allocation for a not-for-profit organization. However, we continue to report it based on our Provision of Cultural Services agreement requirements. Here we show a historical reference and projection for 2022 of the earned revenue as a percentage of the town grant. We've included supplemental funding in the statistic for the town grant contribution. And now we're in 2022, the financial summary. Again, this is until the end of October. We expect a small deficit at the end of the year for which the board has the option to fund through our special project reserve set aside to fund our IDEA initiatives in 2022. Our offsite costs increased and are defined more clearly on the next slide. Our revenue generation from fundraising increased substantially. You will see that we added programs through receipt of these funds, impacting both the program salaries and program expense lines. We also had a leave taking in administration, which resulted in a contract out for professional services to cover the work. We were eligible for COVID wage support in January and February only. Please note this presentation is different than the years past as it shows a part of our operational grant from the town coming from supplemental funding, as Eric mentioned. This has been the case since 2020 and was funded through the Aurora Town Square operating funding in 2020, 2021, and 2022. In practicality, we received these 2 lines of operating funding as one grant from the town. Each year, it has been acknowledged as necessary for operations in advance of discussions of the impact of Aurora Town Square on our operations. Here's the detail of our costs related to our temporary relocation due to the Aurora Town Square project. When planning for the year, we had hoped to have access to St. Andrews College for more of our programming. Coming out of the pandemic and their increased activity to catch up with programs, we had to shift most of our performing arts programs to the Armory, a space that requires a full fit up with stage, lighting, and sound on top of the rental costs. This impacts both our technical assistance and program supply lines. At the time of budgeting, we were also hoping to have access to the new rooms at the library for our educational programs, which increased our costs to rent the Armory for those programs. Lastly, we were forced to move our items in storage in early 2022 due to an irreconcilable conflict with the storage venue. At the same time, we were hit in all areas by inflationary cost increases for services, supplies, and rental of venues. These increased costs were communicated to town staff as they occurred throughout the year. This is again a projection only, and a final reconciliation will be provided to town staff in Q1 as we reconcile our accounts. There are always KPIs that we report in our annual report once the year is complete. The annual report will be available in June of 2023. And now on to our 2023-2026 budget. These are our objectives for the 2023 to 2026 budget. We continue to hold our agreement with the town that we will not increase our program service level while temporarily relocated to give predictability to the budget of offsite costs. We can only increase programs where they are funded by other sources. We plan to continue to invest in our IDEA initiatives in 2023 and 2024, and then reevaluate the program. We are investing development funds to support fundraising of new programs as we move into Aurora Town Square. Lastly, we will conduct community-wide and patron-focused market research in the first quarter of 2023 to identify community priorities for the board's next strategic plan. We were asked to present only our operations and programs budget as contemplated, as if Aurora Town Square was not an impact on our operational future. We understand that the details of our new relationship and funding of such shall be handled in a separate process. Here is our 2023 to 2026 budget request. We've noted that part of our operational funding from the town that was being funded through the Aurora Town Square operating budget as a request for an increase to our base grant. This amount has been funded in the last 3 years in an escalated way to help to keep the commitments made to staff. Both our base operating grant and the increase to the base are increased by the inflationary percentage identified by the town as 3%, 2%, 2%, and 2% for each year respectively. 2023 is the year we have the most confidence in, as we know that our organization will be deeply impacted by Aurora Town Square in the latter 3 years. However, this budget gives a snapshot of what our programs and operations would be like without Aurora Town Square. We have an investment in program staff to meet the obligations of our program and fundraising goals. We no longer have any offsetting subsidy to staff salaries, so we are projecting salaries that better reflect our operational needs to deliver programs in the community. We have 1 more year of costs related to be temporarily relocated, and I realize I did not provide a chart of expected expenses for 2023. They were made available to staff, and I can give you the breakdown verbally. They were in the areas noted for 2022. You can see a planned reinvestment in the community from our special project reserve for our IDEA initiatives as noted earlier. We show a small surplus or deficit on each year funded to or from working capital. This last slide shows a bit more clearly what our request is from the town with the increase to base funding. Since 2020, town staff have included the pressures that built this funding requirement from commitments to staff salaries, a historical funding correction from the first amount that was given to the organization, and a market pressure coming from agreements that changed our access to clients to rent our space. It has grown year over year because our commitments increased until they were stabilized in 2022. We now ask council to add it to our base. These funds are necessary to our regular operations and obligations, regardless of the operational partnership with the Aurora Cultural Center to support Aurora Town Square, as already determined by council last year. We appreciate and acknowledge the deep and strong partnership we already have with the town of Aurora, which enables us to deliver programming in the community. The town's grant continues to provide Aurora Cultural Center with a sustainability so we can have significant impact in the lives of the residents of Aurora. We support healthy, creative outlets that make the community one that people enjoy, thrive, and grow within. We are committed to walking together in this partnership to deliver excellent professional arts and cultural programs to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Council, my recommendation on this one is because there is an increase to the base funding that would see a 0.2% increase to the tax levy. I think that we should defer this to January 23rd meeting. So we're going to be presented with all the options that could see increases in the tax levy. And I think that would be an appropriate time for have that conversation. We get some more information. Obviously, if that is what we want to do, I'm not going to ask for that to be put on the floor just yet, because if we do put a deferral on the floor, there was no questions to the actual motion or the actual conversation that's in front of us. So I'll ask for us, you guys can obviously ask questions to our delegate today, just to get some more information. But I think that's the most prudent thing for us to do, as there would be an increase to the tax levy. It would give us all ample time to discuss this a little bit further, not only with the cultural center, but with staff. And when that's presented with all the other options, maybe there are some savings as well that we can look at that would make this decision a little bit easier as well on all of us. So that's my recommendation. Obviously, you don't need to follow it as a group, but that is what I'm recommending. So if someone does want to do that, we can do that at that time. But right now, I'll ask if there are any questions of Suzanne or Eric or the Cultural Center. Councilor Gallo?
Thank you. And thank you for, once again, a very thorough report on the wonderful things the center does. Before I ask a question, just a quick comment. Mr. Mayor, we will probably agree to disagree on sustainability and self-sufficiency of operations. I was on council when this organization was established. I was a member of the board as a citizen member. I was a member of the board for 2 terms as a councillor. I understand the Cultural Center extremely well, and never did I feel that it was supposed to be self-sufficient. And I would suggest that there isn't one cultural center in Ontario that is self-sufficient. So we'll agree to disagree on the history of
Councillor, we're not going to debate, but I'm just going to say, I didn't say that they should be. It was said when they first came, and it is in the documentation.
We'll
And I'm
agree
sure-
to disagree on.
Okay, it is in the
on that.
documentation, but okay. Go ahead.
Could you just, through you, Mr. Mayor, go through that additional funding and the history of it? I think started in 2019, but it could be 2020, and that council was well aware of it and how it dealt with it from, I believe, 2020, but it could be 2019 until 2022.
Suzanne?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, in 2019, all of the budgets were frozen. And so we had a discussion, and there was a budget review at that time with council, with staff. And what was identified was a historical number when we were, council has heard over the lifetime of the Aurora Cultural Center that the initial contribution to the Cultural Center was not adequate to run the operations. And what hadn't happened in a very clear way up to that point was an understanding of what that number should be. So we defined that very clearly through that review and also conversations, and where the board actually allocated a certain amount of funding through reserves to keep the operations going in 2019. And that figure at that time was $30,400. And so that was put forward alongside a couple other pressures that were written in the financial report around what was hitting the Aurora Cultural Center at the time. The other 2 pressures were the very first compensation program that we built for the Aurora Cultural Center. Before that, wages were determined. I wasn't necessarily part of that process, but what we decided to do, and the board allocated some time and energy of my time towards, was building its first compensation program. And because I came with that skill set and I wanted to build it to market rates, and the market was, it was compared to not-for-profit market rates. The salaries were compared. And we built out a job evaluation system. We built out a fully robust compensation program. And there was a resulting adjustments that were needed to bring people into the pay bands that would match to not-for-profit rates. So there was a salary adjustment that we didn't do all at once, that we did over 3 years. So there was an impact over those 3 years. And the last impact was the fact that there was a new agreement with the library The library, previously, the town would rent out the Magna and Lebovic room, and there was a new agreement that the library had the option of renting out those spaces and offering them into the community. And the rates at which they offered them and the offering of free space in collaboration for performing in their space, et cetera. They had a strategy around bringing people into the library. I don't dispute that. What was a very clear and a very obvious impact to us was a loss of rental income of $15,000. And we proved that in 2019 where that came from. We heard from our renters that they were going to the library because they didn't need to pay as much or at all. And so we, at that time, came to talk to council about and town staff about that significant market impact on our operations. So those three were what contributed to that funding of, in the first year, it was 58,700. In 2021, it was 69,200. And in 2022, it was 82,000. We're now at a place where all the salary adjustments have been made, and we are just asking for it to be rolled over on the same rate as the base level funding. The way it was handled was, from my perspective, we certainly talked to town staff about this impact. And at the time, we were just coming into COVID. With 2020 was a really big year of uncertainty. And there was an understanding that it would be treated as funded through the Aurora Town Square operating budget. I'm not party to the other conversations and how they happened, but it was presented to council within a report by the finance department that outlined that that it would be funded by that through that source.
Counselor, just before I get you to go, I got the clerk chirping in my ear that we should have a motion on the floor. So can I just get a motion to receive at this point, and then we'll look at, yeah. So you'll move that, seconded by Counselor Thompson. Thank you.
Through you, so those 3 years, they were funded from the funds that were linked to Town Square operating. And I think it was clear to all of us that that's where the money was coming from. So that's clear to me. Eric had mentioned the second part of the motion that isn't before us, but that may come before us at some point. Could you or Eric just elaborate on that? I wasn't clear on what the issue was there.
Suzanne?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the wording in the motion says that the temporary relocation costs would only be paid if they cannot be covered by other sources. That was not our understanding of the memo of agreement that we have with the town. So the understanding is that if we incur offsite costs, that those would be covered through the Aurora Town Square operating budget, because it's a direct relationship. And we keep very, very, very close watch over what is considered a cost that exists because we are not in our own venue. What the impact of having it worded that way is that we are unable to have a surplus on the year and reinvest that in the community. We cannot have success over the year, because it means that if we are successful elsewhere, then it has to go to paying for these offsite relocation costs, which were not of our making. The other thing that happens is that we are not completely funded by the town. We have a number of other sources. We have donors, we have sponsors, and we have grant funders who all expect that the dollar they give us goes into programming, not to cover offsite relocation costs. So it's very difficult to have a motion worded as it is.
Okay,
Counselor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just so I understand, it's not the amount. So it says that up to a maximum of 175,600 in funding from the Aurora Town Square operating budget to offset any relocation-driven operation deficits experienced by the cultural center. You want it to stop right there. Is it that last that is unable to fund through other funding sources to be tentatively approved? It's that last piece that's an issue?
It's correct, but Ms. Haynes?
It doesn't reflect the memo, but I would accept it if you want to end it there,
Okay.
because it's not about an operating deficit for us. It's about temporary relocation costs that are written into a memo of agreement between the two organizations.
So it's not three,
Councillor.
it's not the 175, 600 that you're debating. It's the wording of
That is the
that last
maximum
little
we're
part.
expecting.
Okay.
Councillor.
So just generally, I'm happy to continue the discussion. It's my view that it should be part of the base. I have no desire for it to hit the tax base. So we'll have to be as creative as we can between now and when we make a final decision, but it's my perspective that it should be part of the base.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne and Eric, for coming this evening and the presentation. Just as I've said for others, I mean, it's certainly been a trying time. I'm sure that, you're looking forward to a more stable future. And I certainly wish it comes sooner than later for sure, but kudos to you, the staff and the board for the work that you've done over the past year. I just had one quick question with regards to your line item with regards to fundraising, grants, donations, and sponsorships. In your 2022 budget proposal, you had indicated you were hoping to receive $380,000. You exceeded expectations. Your year-end projection is $502,000, which is fantastic, by the way. But going forward for your 2023 budget, you've identified $577,000, which is a wonderful number if you're able to hit it. Perhaps you can just expand on some of the things that you're planning to do or why you're confident you can reach that plateau, because as you've indicated here, it is 40% of your budget. And so my follow-up question will be, do you have contingency plans if you fall short for whatever reason?
Suzanne.
Mayor, yes, we were very successful in grant funding, and we were able to add more programs in 2022. So that's where the dollars came in and the dollars went out in 2022. What we also have is a very strategic fundraising plan tied to Kaleidoscope in the schools and the growth of that particular program. So in 2022, we went to 36 schools. The final portion of that growth plan has us going to 52 schools. And so there's a significant amount of money that we need to raise around that particular program. And what's nice about that is that you know that if you don't raise that, then that's the program that's impacted, and it's not the rest of the operations. What's also in 2023 are some grants that we received in 2022 that were for 2022 and 2023. They're guaranteed funds. There's things that are going to happen in 2023 but won't continue. It's COVID funding, and that's already in the bank. So we already have that. We know that it's coming. It's already actually literally in our bank. What this gives us is a year, and we've actually just hired a new development officer because the board determined that we really needed to have someone with that particular skill set and strength to help us grow into these programs. And that person, we have full confidence actually that they're going to be able to raise what we need, or again, we'll look at that particular program. What's nice is that again, it's staged over the year. So we will certainly do our spring session. We have all of that allocated, and we'll have a look at the fall session if things are falling short.
Councillor.
Wonderful. And certainly, wish you all the best in achieving that so that you don't have to look at the alternatives. I guess, is our CAO, Mr. Nadarozny, online? A question to Mr. Nadarozny. Doug, you've heard some concerns with regards to the wording as well as some of the history. If council decides to do as the mayor suggested and wait until the end to determine with regards to these increases, can you also provide council with at least a little bit of either a memo or a report that speaks specifically to the concerns raised about the wording for the offsite cost expenses, as well as maybe a little bit of a brief summary or history over the last few years and how we've gotten to where we are?
Mr. Seo.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that wouldn't be a problem.
Councillor.
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Gardner, you had your hand up, but you took it down, I believe. So I'm going to go to Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. I think Councillor Thompson asked some of the questions I wanted and clarified that we get some of that information as well in relation to that memo. So I just want to really thank you very much because I know you guys have been very good at providing your breakdown with your financials and your contributions. And Suzanne, I know you worked over your back and forward and all over the place for these grants and took advantage of as many opportunities as you possibly could to ensure you can keep the lights on, especially during COVID. So I really do appreciate all the hard work that your organization has done. I've had the pleasure to be on the board and be alongside all the hiccups and the bumps along the road. And I have had that inside look under the curtain, as they say, to know that you guys have done your due diligence and you do great KPIs and you've done some hard work to grow out of this. So I do think it needs to be part of your base. I don't want to see it on the tax levy. I really hope that there are other ways that we can help fund this. And congrats on your fundraising efforts and your sponsorship, and keep it going, and your partnerships and relationships. And I think you're doing some great marketing and packages as well. And we just got to keep on going with it. You're getting some really good feedback from the community, at least that I get from. So I just want to say congrats on that.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, I'm going to come back to you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I agree with all of the comments. I think this money needs to be in the base funding, but I certainly don't want to see it on the tax base. So I look forward to any memo or report that's coming back. Also, could I see the screen? Could you show this council the screen on earned revenues as a percentage of the town's grant?
We're just getting that up for you, Councillor.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you as well. Because
Maybe I'll bring the document and we can put it up next Monday.
Please.
How's that?
I don't know of any cultural center anywhere that completely pays its way. My understanding was decreasing reliance on the town's money. So I just want to see, should I be right in that? I just want to see where we are with respect to what the cultural center is bringing in as opposed to the money they receive from the town. Okay.
That was the one. It was the one. There we go.
Okay, so thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's looking good to me. And also, I think this is a truth. I think that we're one of the few cultural centers in Ontario, and certainly one that's done one of the best jobs of staying open during COVID and providing services for our residents. So I'd like to thank Suzanne and Ms. Haynes and the staff, and also the board. I have never seen a board work this hard, and I've been part of it, and I think now for 6 years. It is an incredible experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'm not decided in terms of the base being added. That's still to be decided for next week. But how my colleagues around the table can say that we got to try to figure out a way to increase this base without increasing the tax levy. I'm not sure how that's going to be done, because you're either taking from Paul to give to Larry or Mary or whatever that term is. That's what's going to have to take place. So it's not some kind of miracle money that's going to fall. That's not going to increase our tax levy. I find that with COVID, with all the financial statements I've looked at, town related or otherwise, it's become more opaque since 3-4 years ago. And the cultural center budget and other budgets that I've seen tonight are not that much different. And that said, before, I want to applaud Suzanne, Eric, and the board for doing a great job of stick handling through this mess that we called the pandemic, as did the library and other organizations. It's definitely a challenging time. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Suzanne, the last couple of years, we've seen government grants coming in to help out with salaries and so forth. And I'm finding it challenging to kind of interpret where that would fall, because I don't see a specific line item for the grant monies or a safe return or whatever it's called. So can you identify where the grant monies are located in the statements, and how do you differentiate between administrative salaries and program salaries?
Suzanne?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, the tourism wage subsidy, the 10% not-for-profit wage subsidy, they all came into effect over COVID. And accountants and auditors alike were trying to find a way of how it should be presented in financial statements. If you look at our audited financial statements, it's not as opaque. It's very clearly laid out the amounts that were received for all of those subsidies. And we are required to show it as an offset for our salaries. So what it ends up doing is artificially lowering our salary costs because of the subsidy. Boy, did I want to represent it differently so that I could show you really clearly what that looked like and what kind of support we were getting from the federal government. So it's within that number. Like I said, it is very clear in our audited statements. But we were asked to tie our presentation to our audited statements in case somebody wanted to look at both. So that's what we did. In terms of other grants for re-engagement, tourism and relief fund, reopening, there has been the gamut of titles, and we don't mind any of that because it was money that was available to us as a not-for-profit charitable organization in the arts, which were very strongly hit by COVID, us included. So we took all of the advantage that we could, and you see it in that one line that Councillor Thompson referenced, which is the fundraising line. So the revenue is in there. Again, it's well laid out in our audited financial statements for 2020, 2021, and will be also for 2022 when those statements come out in June. And I've completely forgotten the third question. I'm sorry.
Councillor?
I forget it as well.
Oh.
So I guess
That's a good strategy.
we're all off the hook of hearing more. Like, Councillor Kim, go ahead.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so then the fundraising line there, to tie it back to the audited statements, then approximately how much of the 380 is the Safe Start and other government grants?
Suzanne?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, are you talking about the 2022 financial summary? Okay, so the 380 actually doesn't have any wage subsidy in it at all. That is a fundraising goal prior to us knowing whether we were going to have any subsidy. It is offset in the administrative and program salaries lines. So it doesn't show up as a fundraising dollar. It doesn't show up as a fundraising grant. It shows up as a subsidy against salaries. So the 502 is actually the full number of our grant, donation, sponsorship, fundraising activities. It doesn't include any of the offset for salaries. Does that make sense?
Thank you. So essentially, through you, Mr. Mayor, the 100,874 is the net amount when you back out the COVID relief funding then.
Suzanne?
We didn't know at the beginning of the year whether there would be a temporary wage subsidy or any wage subsidy. It was very unclear month to month. It was extended month to month, sometimes week to week. So we didn't project anything to be received in 2022, but we did receive January and February subsidies.
Councillor?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Suzanne. So the 2022 year-end projection for program revenue. It's 149,000, so that's 20,000 less than forecast, while the program salaries and the program expenses have gone up. Can you kind of speak to that in terms of what happened to the revenues there? Was normally, if you invest more money, you'd hope to generate more revenues as well.
Suzanne?
So we were in lockdown in the very first quarter, which meant that we could not do any performing arts concerts, and we couldn't run our education programs. So we had to push everything off. We were lucky enough to be able to restart our education program later, but not with the full complement of registrants that we would normally have, which would hit that program number. And in fact, we were unable to reschedule all of our concerts because artists weren't available, space wasn't available. And so we actually had a decreased amount of actual activations for our performing arts side in that first quarter. We were able to do quite a bit of rescheduling, but not all of it. So that 20,000 is an impact of that first quarter, and also in that reduced numbers of people who are registering for our classes, not because they didn't want it. We had wait lists everywhere, but we only had so much space that we could actually use for those classes. The other impact, there was one other impact I was just going to speak to. It's late, I think. The family programming. So we had great success with getting new sponsors and new grants in for our family programming. And part of the pitch around that was that we weren't going to charge families to participate, under the understanding that for this year, for 2022, 2023, we wanted families to have the opportunity to come back without cost. So it was a reinvestment in the community to say, you know what, we just really want you to come out and enjoy the shows. We want you to feel what it's like to be part of a concert, an event with your kids. You haven't gotten to do that for 2 years. Please come back. And sponsors joined us for that. So you'll see it in the sponsor line, but not in the program line, because it was the revenue came into that line. An important note, sorry, I blanked on that. So in terms of the salaries on the program side, we still needed the people to be able to facilitate all of the programming. And we also had quite a significant shift during COVID around what was necessary on the communication side. When we were not able to program in 2020, our regular programming, we spent an enormous amount of time speaking with the community, encouraging them to be creative, starting new initiatives, finding opportunities to inspire the community in a completely different way. And we had this unbelievable conversation with them, but that takes a lot of communication. And, you know, my communications manager, Jane Taylor, will tell you that it was like a job and a half. And her job used to be to also program all of our performing arts. We didn't have that component, but she spent all of her time building these new systems for us around communication, which are now in place and are still being used and will help us and launch us into that future. So.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a fantastic explanation. Certainly, you know, to get families back in, you know, you certainly need to give them a carrot, and so I fully appreciate the circumstance and explanation. My last question is, in your 2023-26 operating budgets, it's great that in 24 you're anticipating program revenue increase, which is fantastic, and but conversely to the last question, here you got program expenses actually going down significantly. So can you explain that? Because that's a wonderful process that you got going if you can continue that trend.
Suzanne?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So remember those grants I talked about, the 2022, 2023 grants that we got from the federal government? Those are enabling programs in 2023. But those programs won't be able to continue. So those have program expenses tied to them. And you see those in 2023, but they're not there in the future years.
Okay.
Councillor?
Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Weiss?
Thank you. Just a couple of comments and a question. Thank you for the presentation, and I'm so impressed with the responses to the questions asked of you. I too am interested in hearing how this can be taken off the tax base, as Councillor Kim suggests. And I want to thank Eric for his opening comments about this shouldn't be something that's done for 5 or 10 minutes at the end of a year, and that needs some more collaboration so that we can understand more of the details that are so important for the work that you do. I also want to congratulate you on the Kits for Kid program, and that's recognized in the Kaleidoscope. Is that the Kaleidoscope? I think it's a brilliant way to engage children in the schools in order to get them to have a love of the arts and culture. And it also is going to be inspirational for them to participate more in the community. Now, my question, however, has to do with another cultural organization, a Rural Black Community Association. And I'm just wondering, and I see what you've done with your IDEA programs, I'm wondering what collaboration outreach has gone on. And I also am aware that 30% of our population here has English as a second language. And so I'm wondering what plans are in store for engaging with the Aurora Black Community Association and other newcomers and your targets for that.
Suzanne?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for that question. Our IDEA initiatives are really important to the organization. It's a lens through which we look at our programming. So when we're looking just as a base level understanding of our performing arts, our education program, and our gallery program, we look for opportunities, first off, to work with artists who may not have had a voice in the community. So that's a start. What we also have is an investment from the board through our Special Project Reserve Fund to bring on an artistic outreach coordinator whose sole responsibility is to work within the IDEA work that we're doing. The first year we had Glenn Murray, and he brought us a number of new events and new relationships within the community. He brought a voice to the Aurora Cultural Center that we hadn't had yet. He brought the IDEA symposium where we could hear from our partners. And he also helped us build an IDEA collaborative working group. And this is an important group. It's not an advisor to the board, it's an advisory group to staff. And what this group, the membership of this group is important also. We have Cynthia Wesley Eskimo, who is the VP for Indigenous Affairs at Lakehead University. We have Fiona Durand from Aurora Black Community. We have Itak Sohabadab, who is the head of ERSA, which is a newcomer organization for artists. So established artists who are in another country who immigrate to Canada and don't know where to start. They go to ERSA. She's on our committee. We have May Kamisa, who is a strong member of this community and part of the business community. And I'm missing someone. And Jacob Gal and Brianne from York Pride, and they work with us as well. So they come together on a quarterly basis to us, and it was more often in the kind of early days, but we've established that it can be quarterly. They helped us to build out our recruitment tools with appropriate language so that we could be recruiting differently. They helped us to build the symposium that we built and the World Music Festival. They helped us to build some foundational pieces and framework within which the Aurora Cultural Center would advance this kind of inclusivity, diversity, equity, and accessibility work. The second artistic outreach coordinator that we've hired, Aslaisha Rasami, she is more focused on partnerships and marketing. And so her role shifted, and we wanted this as a strategic, so that now that we have a voice in the community and we have some programming in place, and we understand that we need to be interacting in the community in a particular way, Now we want to build some partnerships with these organizations. So what do we do with Aurora Black Community? What do we do with ERSA? What do we do with York Pride? And she has a list of 10 more organizations that she's going to be working with. So we have all of this genesis of the conversation to build and foster some growth and innovation between the organizations. That doesn't mean we're going to start programming for the Aurora Black Community or for York Pride. What it means is, what does this relationship look like for the Aurora community and for the Aurora Cultural Center to impact that cultural conversation? What would make the most sense of that partnership to be? We have a very direct partnership that's forming right now. And for those of you who will be at the Aurora Black Community Gala dinner on February the 3rd, we have come in and chosen the artists, curated the artists, and are doing all of the production lead up for them, because that's not a skill set they have. So it's a true partnership that enables them to have something in the community. And we stand back and say, we'll participate on this front. So it's not always going to look like that, but we have a number of initiatives and partnerships that we're trying to grow to address these issues.
Councilor.
No, thank you very much. Fulsome answer as always.
Thank you. Councilor Gallo, second time.
Anyone who isn't impressed with that, I just check yourself. Something's wrong. That is just fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for that. It's amazing. And the contribution to the community that brings, it's just unbelievable. Just one question to actually maybe to finance. That 720 from Town Square that we funded that addition from in the past 3 years, is that still part of our budget?
Through you,
Mr. Mayor. So the 720 is still in the budget, and the portion of it that's recommended to be supporting the ACC's request this year is for the relocation costs, because we have yet to open Aurora Town Square. So the relocation costs should end once they actually get into their new home.
Councilor?
But through you, that is the fund that we funded the same amounts in the previous 3 years. That is a source of funding. Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we funded the relocation costs plus the additional ask that the cultural center is seeking at this time as well.
Okay.
Councilor?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Just before I ask for that motion to defer, Suzanne, thank you very much for coming. I did just have one question, and I think it's important for everyone to have an understanding of this, just because, some people probably ask, what does the town of Aurora's operating grant, what does that cover? And so maybe if you can just give maybe a little bit of an explanation of what do those funds cover for the ACC?
It's a very good question. The reason I pause is because we don't allocate a particular line item to the town grant. As you can see in the budget, the town grant doesn't cover all of our salaries. It doesn't cover a specific program. It is part of the whole, and Canada Council, Ontario Arts Council, Canadian Heritage all deal with things the same way, where there's an operating grant that goes to a cultural organization to help with sustainability and lift it up. And so it's a lot of different pieces of the budget, and we don't actually do a line by line.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mostly as was mentioned by, I think by everyone around this table, is that the incredible work that yourself, the board, volunteers, staff, it's just an incredible amount of work, and the value that you guys bring to the town is incredible. And I think that the support that we show, I think, is evident just by the fact that what we're doing from a cultural perspective and in growing the downtown core with the initiative of the square to have a place that we can grow that cultural aspect within our town. It's actually interesting that, diversity, inclusivity, and equity was kind of brought up here in this discussion, because I was in my office today with the CEO of the Greenbelt Foundation, and he asked me, he goes, what is really Aurora about? And I said, I'm actually glad you asked that, because I think there's a misconception of what our town is about. And our town is very diverse right now. We're a very diverse community, and it's important to us. And it's important that we continue to grow that diversity and make sure that everyone feels welcomed in our town. And so we appreciate the things that you guys are doing. I thank you. And we're looking forward to when the square does open up to some fantastic programming between yourselves and the town. So thank you very much for coming this evening. Council, if I could get someone to put a motion to defer to January 23rd. Councillor Kem, anyone want to second that? Councillor Weiss, thank you. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much, everyone. And now I'll go with a motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Weiss, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening. Really appreciate it.